Good morning out there. This is the morning show on your global standout channel, Arise News. I'm Reuben Abati.
And I'm Vambai Mutiniri Ekweong.
And I'm Rufai Oseni. I've got a great show lineup for you for the next 3 hours. Sit back, relax, let's kickstart your day. The morning show begins right now.
Amid rising fragmentation, accelerating complexity, and rapid technological change, the imperative for an impartial platform for dialogue has never been greater. The World Economic Forum's 56th annual meeting at this pivotal moment builds on the forum's long-standing tradition of convening stakeholders from across geographies, industries, and generations to enable real dialogue, solve problems around shared challenges, and spotlight innovations driving the future. Joining us later on this show to discuss issues that will shape discussions in Davos, from climate change and the opportunities for Nigeria, is an environmentalist, retired Air Vice Marshal Kenneth Iyamu.
Also, we shall be engaging Dr. Eva Umeozo, global oil and gas expert, founder of Proctem. We'll be discussing ways we can improve, regulate, and boost our oil and gas sector in Nigeria to meet global standards.
We'll catch up on news-making headlines around the globe. FM Akisar brings us updates on the foreign scene. On the World Brief, we also review today's newspaper headlines across the globe. Rose Sadiri will join us live from Davos in Switzerland to give us updates on the World Economic Forum Annual Meeting 2026. Aaron Akerjala will be taking us through spotting activities across the globe, while Vimbai will be filling us in on what's trending around the world, highlighting impactful stories and our milestones. And our good news report is going to be all that and a whole lot more today on the morning show.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. And we begin with Nigeria to the world, as Vice President Kashim Shettima has commissioned Nigeria's first ever sovereign pavilion at the World Economic Forum in Davos, describing the initiative as a clear statement of the country's renewed seriousness, readiness, and resolve to actively shape global economic conversations. Speaking at the formal opening of Nigeria House at WEF 2026, Shettima says nations do not prosper in isolation, stressing that Nigeria's future growth depends on deliberate, structured engagement with the global economy, while noting that the pavilion was conceived as a whole-of-government platform led by the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, with senior leadership across investment, foreign affairs, energy, infrastructure, technology, climate and culture. Shettima emphasized that its true vitality must come from the private sector.
The message of this House is simple and deliberate. We are replicating on the global stage what His Excellency President Bola, Ahmed, Tinubu has delivered at home in repositioning Nigeria's economy. We are here to engage the world from a position of strength. It's one of the world's largest emerging markets. Nigeria is a nation of over 242 million people today, with a median age of about 17 years. And the trajectory of global growth is facing Africa. And certainly, most certainly, Nigeria will make or mar that transition.
Well, still looking at reform, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, says Nigeria's recent macroeconomic reforms were beginning to deliver tangible results, reflecting improved stability and a gradually strengthening growth outlook. In its latest World Economic Outlook, titled Global Economy Steady Amid Divergent Forces, IMF upgraded Nigeria's growth projection to 4.4%, representing an upward revision of 0.2 percentage points from its October WEO. Economic growth was projected to moderate slightly to 4.1% in both 2026 and 2027, also marginally higher than earlier estimates, underscoring growing confidence in the reform trajectory. The latest projections emerged in the same day. Executive Director, Chief Executive Nigerian Export Promotion Council, Nonye Ayeni, disclosed that the country's non-oil export reached an all-time high of about $6.1 billion in 2025. IMF stated that the improved outlook came amid a broader reassessment of economic prospects across sub-Saharan Africa, where the fund also raised growth expectations. And now to security issues. As the Minister of Defense, retired General Christopher Musa is talking tough. Retired General Musa says terrorists and bandits never honor peace agreements, describing such engagements as deceptive and harmful to national security. Speaking in an interview with the BBC Hausa service, Musa said negotiations with terrorists were never part of the federal government's non-kinetic strategies. He stressed that experience had shown that armed groups exploited peace deals to regroup and launch further attacks. Musa expressed concern that some state and local governments, as well as local communities, had continued to enter into negotiations with bandits despite repeated warnings from the federal government. According to him, such actions undermine coordinated efforts to end insecurity across the country. Musa urged state and local governments to immediately discontinue negotiations with terrorist groups, insisting that bandits lack the moral restraint to honor agreements. In other news, the former Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, has surrendered himself to the Department of State Services. This is following days of tension surrounding his stalled bail and heavy security presence at the Kuje Correctional Center in Abuja. Malami's decision comes after his continued detention despite meeting bail conditions. This triggered widespread attention and concern. His confinement had turned into a major security issue, with movements around the correctional facility tightly controlled for several days. The development followed a prolonged standoff at the prison, where security operatives reportedly prevented Malami's release even after a federal high court granted him bail. This situation created uncertainty and heightened tension within and outside the facility. Well, we're going to shift our attention to politics now, as Kano State Governor Abba Yusuf on Monday evening met with President Bola Tinubu at the State House. Details of the meeting are yet to be disclosed, but it comes amid reports that Governor Yusuf is planning to defect from the New Nigeria People's Party, NNPP, to the governing All Progressives Congress, APC, a move delayed since earlier this month. The meeting was among the few that the president held on Monday following his return from the 2026 Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week. Rabiu Kwankwaso, former governor of Kano and Yusuf's political godfather, has publicly criticized the potential defection, describing it as an act of betrayal. Well, we wonder what his response would be. We've seen how relationships between godfather and godson get fractured and spill over into governance. It will be interesting to see how things play out in Kano.
So to a large extent, the negotiation is pretty much centered around who gets what in Kano. Don't forget, if whatever deal Abba Yusuf is doing does not carry along Ganduje, with Ganduje's own challenges he's having with the Kano state government, then there'll be no deal. And the possibility of, automatic ticket, that's what most of the governors would envisage when they get into the APC. But that can also be very challenging at a point in time. Do not forget that in the last election, Ganduje did float, what's his name now? Gawuna, against Abba Yusuf, and they went at it. And you will remember the merry-go-round around the court before Abba Yusuf was finally returned. So that possibility is also there. So I think going to President Tinubu is also the fine print. But I think the big ticket also will be, who is that big person that is coming with Abba Yusuf? Because left for President Tinubu, and Abba Yusuf is more or less like a Kwankwaso on top of the deal. But there's also another counterclaim that they're trying to arrange an Obi Kwankwaso ticket on another side of it. So it's quite very hazy. As regards the IMF, yes, the IMF will keep saying, we are seeing the signs, but we are not seeing the signs in this economy. And let's say pure and simple. You see, there are many theories that explain things around this. There's a dependency theory that talks about the fact that we're dependent on one product. And when we're dependent on one product, it leaves us short. If you have easy price as regards that, then it leaves us short. You have an economy that cannot really bolster demand. You have an economy that the reforms has destroyed the purchasing power of that economy. And because of that, the people's lives are poor off. In 1981, when we renegotiated the new minimum wage, the new minimum wage was agreed at 125 naira. 125 naira in dollar terms then was about $195 to $205 if the dollar to the naira was 0.61. Today, the minimum wage is barely $50. As at that time, the minimum wage of an average Nigerian worker in 1981 could buy you multiple bags of rice, 3 to 4 bags of rice. I think the bag of rice was about 30 naira. Today, your minimum wage will pretty much be able to get just a bag of rice. At some point, when rice price even went up, your minimum wage couldn't buy you a bag of rice. What am I trying to bring out? There's a massive depletion in purchasing power of an average Nigerian. That's one factor. Second factor is what I call the statistic gameplay. Most of the statistics being churned out by National Bureau of Statistics are things that don't relate to our lives. Example is the inflation numbers. We are saying, okay, inflation is about 15% after we rebased. Inflation is about 15%, but all of a sudden, interest rate is still pegged at about 27%, and interest rate is not coming down. What's the rule of thumb in economics? If inflation comes down, interest rate also should come down. Till today, businesses will get loans at over 30%. So you don't have a proper structured economy to be able to aid businesses in the first place. And once that happens, demand is skewed. If you go back to the Keynesian theory, they'll tell you about, growth in the economy through consumption. Where's the purchasing power of an average Nigerian? The other day, somebody put up the prices in 2020 and the prices today, and there was like a 500% increase in the prices. At the same time, the purchasing power of people have been degraded. All of those reforms have also brought hardship. They said, when they remove fuel subsidy, they will pass the money on to the state. We're not saying what the states are doing with the money. The federal government, all the same. We're not even meeting, revenue quotas. At the same time, we are borrowing so much more. The argument they made before now is that, once they remove the subsidy, borrowing will reduce because all the money. But today we are borrowing astronomically. We are taking loans everywhere. We are not seeing the impact. We are barely servicing our budgets. We're having 3-4 budget cycles. Take, for instance, 2025 budget has snowballed into 2026 now. So there are multiple problems as we speak on ground. And that's why you're not seeing real growth. But you see, all of this that the IMF keep talking about, the real problem is that all of these statistics we are looking at is not reflecting on the life of people. Just imagine, we are saying unemployment rate is about 4.8%. I mean, come off it in Nigeria with the massive rate of unemployment and underemployment, but also because they've changed methodology. So we don't have statistics that truly reflect where we are and our face. We don't have statistics that shows the people what is truly happening. Yeah, we can tell all of these stories, but what's the effect on an average Nigerian? It's been more pain, it's more people being pushed into poverty, it's more people being pushed into penury. So, to a large extent, the true bellwether of the economy is not your big multilateral agencies around the world. It's really feeling the pulse of Nigerians. If Nigerian lives start to get better, we will all see it. As regards the case of bandits, the Minister of Defense is totally correct. Bandits, criminals, terrorists, whatever you call them, just use this peace deal to buy time. This is not the first time that they are going to break the peace deal. That's why I'm surprised at, states like Katsina. Katsina in the past, that these same criminals have broken the peace deal multiple times, are those that you are signing the same peace deal with, which they will break it again. So what's the way forward? We need to be able to have a government in place that can truly tackle insecurity, any means possible. Couple of ideas. Economic growth in that region is one of them. I keep talking about the story of Fernando de Soto. It might not necessarily work for Nigeria, and the Shining Path rebel. The government then of Peru was having a big problem with the Shining Path rebel. Fernando de Soto said, the people that are supporting all these rebels in this area, all they need is property rights. The government democratized property rights. Those people stopped their support for the Shining Path rebel. It was easy. So if it's economic improvement, whatever we are going to do, you can call it kinetic or non-kinetic, about going apart from going straight at them, we need to be able to solve the problem once and for all. Because if you don't have that problem solved, it's going to impact a lot on your food production. Look at mango, for instance, and the places attacked. Look at Bokos. Those are places that really produce Irish potatoes and other food crops in this country. So I think the ball is in our court. We need to play it quickly.
Okay, on the various subjects, what are the issues? Now, first, the opening of Nigeria House in Davos. It's called the Davos Promenade or Blue Boulevard, some people say. 2 years ago, I visited that same boulevard in the company of Rutu Sudiri, where Nigeria was not represented there. But to have Nigeria there for the first time, showcasing investment opportunities in Nigeria, and the formal opening in that regard by Vice President Kashim Shettima, I think is a major development. 2 years ago, Vice President Kashim Shettima represented Nigeria. Last year, he also represented Nigeria, and this year again, he's there. Now, this will fall within the province of soft diplomacy, sending Nigeria to the world, opening Nigeria up to the world, and saying that these are opportunities that are available in Nigeria. Now, it's not just governments that are on that boulevard or promenade, as they call it. Very lovely place, particularly at night. You know, there are also businesses there, all the big businesses of the world. And then, you know, they just advertise their country. So I think in terms of, you know, President Tinubu's objective of attracting foreign investment, that looks like a one-stop, you know, platform on the occasion of the WEF this year to say to the outside world that these are opportunities that are available in Nigeria. However, I still make the point, beyond the fact that the Ministry of Agriculture was there, the MITI was there. MITI is the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Oduwole, and other ministers who were showcasing what is available in their several sectors. The question to ask is, where is the connection with the Nigerian embassy in Switzerland? Now, you know, we have not, our ambassadors have been appointed, they've been nominated, they've been endorsed by the Senate. But you see, many of these foreign policy, foreign movement moves, foreign movement initiatives by the Tinubu administration, they cannot have concrete value if we do not have a well, you know, funded, well-purposed, functioning embassy or mission, let's use another word, in most of these countries where these activities happen, because it's the mission in that particular country that will follow up. MITI, Ministry of Agriculture, these are agencies of government that are far away, you know, from the main center of the activity, even in terms of reporting, even in terms of recording. So I think that Nigeria has an obligation to take this idea of making our embassies functional. I said when ambassadors were nominated that it was coming a bit late in the day, because to even get the agreement would take about 7 months. You may not have any ambassador leaving this shores until maybe later this year. And then, of course, it will be election time. But they probably will be retained if and when President Tinubu gets the second time. But for sure, for starting point, I think having a Nigeria house at Davos is a good idea, considering that, you know, this has to be sustained. Now, very quickly to General Musa, saying that negotiating with bandits and terrorists is counterproductive because it doesn't work. Now, look at during the Buhari administration. The Buhari administration made this idea of cutting, bandits and terrorists a major, agenda for fighting terrorism. The argument was that under UN protocols, there's disarmament, and then there's, rehabilitation and all of that. Some concept about, what the UN protocol says. And it was in that regard that the Buhari administration bought uniforms for repentant terrorists and bandits, as they call them. In fact, in one state of the federation, the state even organized wives for these, terrorists and bandits in the expectation that that would domesticate them. But what General Musa, who had served previously as the Chief of Defense Staff, is saying is that that strategy does not work, is that under this administration is not part of the framework for non-kinetic intervention. And that states like Katsina that are using that non-kinetic in their own definition approach, are sabotaging Nigeria. Because what they have seen is that it never works. That these terrorists, they just use this, surrender, in quotes, as some kind of excuse to launch fresh attacks. And I think that General Christopher Musa is in a good position to know, because this has been his lifetime, vocation. And I think it is important to say that the minister, General Musa, should go a step further, not just at the level of engagement with recalcitrant states like Katsina, where the governor had even told us that some bandits had been freed on the order of the state, and that the courts had been asked to release bandits, because bandits had also released some persons that they abducted. Now, what General Musa is saying is that that is unacceptable. That's not the position of the government. So we should have, better intergovernmental, relations. Was it not even the same Katsina state government that told us that nobody should just criticize them on what they have done, and that they don't care? They will continue to negotiate with terrorists. Now, one state, one subunit cannot sabotage what the federal strategy is in terms of how to contain terrorism and banditry. So General Musa may have made this rhetorical statement in public on the occasion of a major military event. He should go a step further. And at that event where he spoke, one other thing that came out was the point about welfare. A certain publication complaining about the welfare for our military personnel in the battlefront. Now, the acting director of the Army Public Relations, Apollonia Anele, tried to debunk this. But the truth of the matter is that we have enough evidence that, in fact, our troops on the battlefront deserve to be better treated. And I think it's not just an observation, a social media publication that can just be waved away cavalierly. Now, IMF has been consistently supportive of President Tinubu's reform. There's nothing President Tinubu's government does that IMF will not say, oh, it's in the good interest of Nigeria. As recently as the rebasing of the inflation rate by the National Bureau of Statistics, IMF also came in and said it was a good move. But economists in Nigeria, Dr. Ayo Tereba, whom I spoke with, and I also think Dr. Muda Yusuf, CPP, have both said no. There's a miscalculation on the part of the Bureau of Statistics of Nigeria, and that, look, they just, messed up the data. So, but IMF has consistently said, oh, there will be growth. They now say 4.4% in 2026. I think they even mentioned 4.6%. And that, it will reduce to 4.2 or 4.4% in 2027. Now, this is playing politics with data. You may say IMF resident representative is not playing politics, but the politics is that Nigerians are not seeing the effect of this data, whether it's rebased or reconfigured, or the methodology has been readopted or revised in line with international best practices, as the MBS says. We don't see the evidence. Life is harder today. The cost of this pen in 2022 is not what it is costing now in 2026. That's the basic common sense that people can find in that regard. As for Abubakar Malami, former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, who has been rearrested by the Department of State Services shortly after he had completed his bail conditions, met his bail conditions, and then he was arrested as he came out of Kuje prison. What we just asked for is fair hearing, justice, and not the victimization of everybody. Any person that is targeted by the state for whatever reason is guilty, is innocent until pronounced guilty by the courts. So there's the presumption of innocence in our laws. And Abubakar Malami, former AGF, is also entitled to that. He is not to be subjected to any form of victimization or persecution. even when we insist that nobody is above the laws of the land.
Absolutely. As I pick up, let me first pick up on economic news, linking it with the developments in Davos, where the vice president, as he opened that beautiful Nigeria house, said that the Nigeria house is a response to the lapses of the past. Now, what did I take away from this? I took away from the fact that we are acknowledging that in the past things have gone wrong, especially when we look at the example of Japan last year, which was huge news and a massive scandal that the Nigeria booth was, in essence, a shell. There was nothing there, that public funds have been expended to secure that space because these spaces are not free and nothing had been done with it. So it's commendable to see that there has been a progression from that way of doing things. And now there's an attempt to ensure that there's some sort of order and a strong diplomatic face to Nigeria's presence. I like that he said that it will be private sector driven. However, while we're looking at it being private sector driven, have we gotten our house in order? Because we have to remember that in all that we are doing, we still don't have an industrial policy. Several developments are happening. Yes, the IMF is projecting growth and higher numbers and so forth. But what is really lying under the surface of this data? The lack of industrial policy, for example, if you juxtapose that to the growth figures and the estimates coming out, when you look at the nitty-gritty of the detail, because we're not really sure where we're going with agriculture, solid minerals, our non-oil revenue, which we continue to promote. So we had a policy that allowed for the import of food and agricultural produce. Now, there was a spike in that by 45%. Now, the farmers are decrying because they are unable to produce, because they're saying that nothing was done to reduce the price of inputs on their side. So our agricultural sector is currently, as much as it is contributing to GDP, it's under pressure because of the effect of imports. Now, because there's no cohesive industrial policy, we were unable to cushion our farmers while we're doing the stopgap measure of importing the food. Very quickly, I'll go to Kano State. Kano State is all about who has the political capital and who has the electoral value between Abba Yusuf and Kwankwaso, so to speak. Now, we know that in the last election, the major factor was the Ganduje factor. If you look at the results, in Kwankwaso's presidential election, he polled about 997,000 votes against Tinubu's 500,000. Abba Yusuf, in the governorship election, polled over 1 million votes against Gawuna's 890,000 votes. So if you're looking at it at the surface, it would appear as though Abba Yusuf has a higher political capital. But when you now look at the fact that there was a backing from Kwankwaso, there was a backing from Ganduje, like Rufai said, will Ganduje be, is Ganduje on course? Is he in agreement with Abba Yusuf? Also, given the fact that we know that there are no automatic tickets for any governors in this coming election, as the APC has said, defecting governors will not get automatic tickets. Well, I hope we can unpack more of these issues further as our time is up. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be crossing over to Rotus Odiri to give us updates on global business activities live from Davos, Switzerland.
Solar energy has improved the lives of Nigerians in the sense that we can have a cleaner environment and thereby preserving the earth for future generations. Our mission is to ensure we develop and deliver locally acceptable, contemporary, and innovative solutions in partnership with global organizations to ensure that we become the first and the trusted choice for Nigerians. So the option of having a solar solution at just 30% equity already ensures that you have money back in your pocket, because then you can then pay on a monthly basis over a period of time, which, if you compare with the fact that you're also paying grid, is actually more affordable over a period of time. Then you can have your access to power under your control at every point in time for up to 10 years.
my smally.
Gen Z mama will carry better swag.
You dey wine. You be like say plenty credit don't overload for that your size.
Credit now water. You say no now.
Glow Talk Master. My little lioness.
Where they retire senior lions.
I dey make one better dress where you go wear for these holidays.
When I land them, I go finish you with plenty kisses.
Who you dey kiss, they finish on my credit? Who be this? Mr. Man.
Ah, Mama.
Why they disturb us now?
You almost give me heart attack.
Feel like say you never hear about Glow Talk Master.
We get free data. Let's video call her.
Ah.
Hi, girl.
Free on Glow Talk Master. Talk for 6 minutes and get 6 minutes free. Plus 15 megabytes of data free. Simply dial *606#. 2,000 naira for new customers. 1,000 naira for voice. 1,000 naira for data.
All right, welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Now, Arise News business correspondent Rotis Odiri hosted a panel session at the World Economic Forum with the theme, Which 2050 Do We Want? One of the panelists, Agnes Calamar, Secretary General of Amnesty International UK, said the first 12 months of Donald Trump's second term in office is a perfect example of authoritarianism. Well, here it is.
Agnes, you've spoken, about your worries over the spread of authoritarianism across the world, and Zainab was just talking about protests, and we've seen a number of protests flare up in different regions. As we march towards 2050, the protests seem to be matching. Well, I'm going to put that to you. Do you think the protests are matching the spread of authoritarianism, and is authoritarianism essentially, is there a check on it in your view?
Well, authoritarianism is galloping, it's increasing. It's not just an Amnesty International finding, it's a finding of everyone who research human rights, democracy, and so on. Some of the most long-term studies have concluded that right now we're back to 1985 level in terms of how many people in the world live in so-called democracies. So we have lost some count since 1985. Since the fall of the Berlin Wall, all the progress, we've seen a U-turn for people around the world. Authoritarianism is quick. Democracy takes a very long time to be established. Look at the United States, 12 months of Donald Trump in the White House, and it is a playbook of how authoritarian practices get embedded into every institutions, from attacks on freedom of expression, freedom of the media, academic freedom, freedom of association, attacks on dissent, creation of new militarized security forces that are unbounded, the attacks on migrants, on refugees, on trans, on women, all of those things have taken place in 12 months.
Well, the World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report has entered its 21st year. This year, geopolitical tensions have emerged as the most severe risk over the next 2 years, while economic risks have experienced the sharpest rises among all risk categories over the 2-year timeframe. The 2026 report is underpinned by the latest annual Global Risks Perception Survey, which this year brought together the views of over 1,300 global leaders and experts across academia, business, government, international organizations, and civil society. Well, Arise business correspondent Rotis Odiri joins us now from Davos to discuss this report. Good morning, Rotis. How are you today? I hope you're warm.
Yeah, well, good morning, Vimbai. Good morning, Dr. Abati, Rufai, our viewers. Yeah, it's actually colder today than it was yesterday, but, you know, it's what you sign up for when you come to Davos.
It is what it is. All right. So, Rotis, can you take us quickly through, the top 10 risks highlighted by the World Economic Forum in the latest report?
Yeah, so Rufai, I mean, we broke it down into two parts, the top 5 and then 6 through 10. So first off, it's geo-economic tensions between countries. Number 2 is state-armed conflicts, which you can kind of, take as an escalation from number 1. Number 3 is extreme weather events. 4 is societal polarization, divide and conquer. And then 5, misinformation and disinformation. Going to the rest of the top 10, and number 6 is economic downturn, erosion of human rights, and adverse outcomes of AI at number 8. Number 9, cyber insecurity, and then number 10, inequality.
All right. Well, looking at other issues that have been spilling out, I think it's a very intriguing report. I can't wait to get into it in detail. But let's look at the geopolitical confrontation part of it, or rather, realignment of geopolitics. How does Mark Carney's visit to China, that's the first by a Canadian Prime Minister since 2017, tie into the observations from this report?
Yeah, so if you look at the summary of the report, Vinbai, one of the points that the World Economic Forum pointed out is that multilateralism is in decline. We've mentioned the fact that Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, we talked about this in our preview yesterday, is one of the heads of global organizations that will be here. And we talked about how the WTO has, almost been sidelined, because with what's been going on between countries wanting to favor bilateralism versus multilateralism. So Mark Carney's visits to China, I think we've got a quote from him. One of the things, and this is where it ties in, he said, is that, this visit is the first one from a Canadian leader in a while, and that essentially, with the progress that has been made between China and Canada, it essentially, solidifies the new world order that we've all been talking about. And a part of that is bilateralism, as opposed to multilateralism that the World Economic Forum points out. Now, to follow that, after that visit, a journalist actually pointed out to Mark Carney that during his campaign, he mentioned the fact that that China is the biggest security risk to Canada. So they said, you were running for office and you were saying China is the biggest risk, and now here you are flying to China to essentially sign up on trade deals. So how do you square, that circle? And the second quote from him was very short and to the point. He said, we basically take the world as it is, as opposed to the world that it should be. So reality over, I guess, emotions or feelings, saying that, look, we just have to recognize where China is. And despite what he said in the past, this is where it is. So you tie that back to the bilateral deals and what the World Economic Forum is pointing out in the reports with multilateralism on the decline. Okay,
Rotus, you and Aneze Osakwe discussed climate change, possibly not getting enough attention this year. Well, maybe that should not be surprising. But do extreme weather events, making the top 3 risks, change that in any way? In addition, does the World Economic Forum walk the talk when it comes to climate care?
Yeah, Dr. Abati, they do walk the talk. As an example, so it's cold, right? And so sometimes I'd sit in our rental car, just turning on the heat to warm up. They have police that walk around the parking lots, and if they see that your car is on for more than 2 or 3 minutes, they knock on your window and tell you to turn off your car because they don't want you to be adding to carbon emissions. We had a hybrid, the battery is down, so we're using fuel now, and so they just basically look for whose exhaust fumes are coming out, and then they come and they tell you that. So they are walking the talk. It's anyone's guess as to whether or not the extreme weather events at number 3 will prompt more discussions on climate change. It just seems, and Nieze pointed this out pretty eloquently yesterday, it just seems that the whole geopolitical tensions, and with Trump coming in here tomorrow and everything, that just seems to be where all the attention is going. I mean, there's still topics on climate change, but, it's anyone's guess.
All right, so societal polarization is at number 4. Rotus, societal polarization in the era of ICE and Trump. How do Trump's comments on alleged Christian genocide in Nigeria tie into all of that? Because it's upending the world.
Well, Yeah, I mean, it's around the world, Rufai, and thanks for adding the ICE situation and also all the other stuff that's going on. Religion, as we know, tribe, they are very, very delicate topics in Nigeria. And with the report points out, that toxic leadership essentially is dividing society. We're divided along income lines, gender lines, and so on. But this example with the Trump saying that there's been according to him, Christian genocide going on in Nigeria, that of course led to a lot of divisions in the country, where everyone was looking at each other through a religious lens. And then you go to ICE, the whole immigration, racism, and so on and so forth. So the report just point that out. And again, I should point, Vimbai read it in her opening. This is not just from WEF. WEF took this survey. It was business leaders, political leaders, and so on that actually put this input together. And that's just, it's the reality of what we're seeing.
All right. It certainly is a reality of what we're seeing. Now, is there a link between misinformation and disinformation at number 5 and adverse outcomes of AI at number 8? For example, we just concluded the Uganda election, and we saw that both sides released so many AI-doctored, videos and pictures and submitted them as evidence of electoral fraud.
Yeah, so on my panel yesterday, there was a gentleman from that was in a company that assists other companies with enterprise solutions for AI, and so he got a lot of questions on that link. And yes, Vimbai, you can actually, because you look at the deepfakes, even in our year-end report for 2025, we had a very sophisticated deepfake of Aliko Dangote, of all people, offering an investment, pitching an investment security to people, which was obviously fake, and we noted it. And that was AI. So social media is also part of that. Dr. Abati mentioned this, I think it was last week or the week before. Dr. Abati mentioned Grok and how Grok has been banned in certain countries and is under investigation because of releasing explicit images of people without their consent. So, while there's, of course, agents of misinformation and disinformation, you can't, divorce it from the advancement of AI and deepfakes and how that is, impacting things like the Ugandan election and other events around the world.
Well, it's day 2, Rotus of the World Economic Forum in Davos. 2 things. What is on the menu for us today? 2, this is the first World Economic Forum that will take place without Professor Klaus Schwab, who founded and became executive chairman of the forum in 1971. Is he in attendance or he's not there? And then tell us about the new leaders, Larry Fink and Andre Hoffman. One is from, Hoffman is from Rush, Fink is from BlackRock.
Yeah, Larry Fink, of course, taking over. I'm not sure if this gentleman, the founder, is in attendance. But Fink, of course, with BlackRock having the largest assets under management for an asset manager, he's essentially trying to, take the leadership, I guess, in a direction that focuses more on capital flows and so on and so forth. But of course, the topic of the day is going to be what dominates. But we feel, at least feel, that the WEF is in good hands with Fink. Some worry, of course, because he's coming from Wall Street and, he's going to obviously have his own influence over matters going forward. But again, he commands a lot of pull. On the agenda for today, there's going to be a number of topics. One of them is on banking acceleration. So that's going to be talking about digital banking and advancements in fintech, how AI keys into that. Also, I think I'm not sure if cryptocurrencies might come up, but I know stable coins might come up because of the legislation that was passed in the United States to essentially legalize stable coins, and then what that's going to mean for cross-border payments. And then also EVs. I saw my first BYD here in Davos just yesterday. So China is making inroads in terms of electric vehicle market share in Europe. So can EVs really dominate is the second, one of the other highlights there. And then governments as an economic super actors. Policy is what essentially is supposed to drive economic advancements across countries, and it starts with governments. And then you've got scaling AI. Now comes the hard parts. How do you actually scale? And then Africa's job engine, jobs, creating jobs for Africa's youth. So that's going to be part of the agenda for today.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that. Rotas, do rush in and get yourself some hot cocoa. I don't know if they have, okay, let me not say any brands. I don't know if they have the type that we like over here, but please do stay warm. All right. Now, here's a roundup report from yesterday's coverage at the World Economic Forum in Davos.
A musical opening for the biggest World Economic Forum ever. Business leaders, heads of state, startup founders, and policymakers descended on the Swiss mountain town of Davos amid tight security, heavy traffic, and a handful of anti-capitalist protesters. The theme this year is a spirit of dialogue. At a time of global division and increased nationalism, Davos is where decision makers will get some face time and set the agenda for the coming year. And this year, Nigeria is making its presence felt. Vice President Kashim Shettima cut the ribbon on Nigeria House, a glitzy venue on the Davos promenade.
There is never a better time to be a Nigerian and to be an investor in Nigeria better than now. We have created the enabling environment for businesses to prosper. From day one, as I said earlier, the president took the bullet by withdrawing the subsidy on petroleum.
Nigeria House has a packed schedule of talks, panels, and receptions planned. The message to the world that the government's economic reforms are working and the time is right to invest in Nigeria. The Nigerian delegation will be joined by 850 business leaders and 65 heads of state, including U.S. President Donald Trump and his entourage, who arrive on Wednesday. Meanwhile, the rest of the world will be watching closely to see if all this talk will be turned into action. Rhoda Sadiri, Arise News.
The world is certainly watching closely. Well, joining us now for World Brief and a review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsonya, who's coming after the break. Do stay with us.
My baba dey always say, for market, every day gets your own wahala. Sometimes people go want scam you, but baba say, no be by gra, you must cool down, dey sharp, because with OPay payment, your money go enter sharp, no story. But inside market, anything fit happen. One day, we no see phone again. My baba remember OPay USSD lock, dial *955*131#. Baba press am, lock account. From market woman to driver, from small boy to big man. Now OPay, they protect people like us. My papa fit sell, press phone, collect POS, and still dey teach me price. And when they don't tire am, go just tap OPay lifeguard. We no fear for this our hustle life. Now OPay be the people payment shield.
Some say learning is fun, but as a mom, I see how demanding it can be for my child. That's why I ensure he starts every day with a cup of Bonvita. Bonvita, prepare them to win every day.
Every business creates data. Sales, payments, movements. Sparkle turns activity into information you can understand. And insights you can act on. Sparkle doesn't just show you what happened, it helps you decide what to do next.
Hello everyone, I'm here with the woman that makes all the things happen in Fidelity Bank, the MD of Fidelity Bank.
FNITCC was conceptualized in 2022, and the whole idea was to create a platform where our exporters lead with the global community are able to showcase their products. What we do in the banking industry is to always try to meet the needs of our customers, and we could see that the exporters were struggling with, they didn't have a global stage on which to showcase their goods. We did so much initially in terms of capacity building. After that, the products were made, were put in proper quality, packaging and all of that. So the next step naturally is to take it to the global stage, especially if you focus on making world-class products.
Like they say, build it and they will come.
Yes, they will, don't worry about it. Build it and they will come.
All right, ma'am.
We are Fidelity. We keep our word.
Good morning. Today's weather will be sunny with a high of 31 degrees.
Alexa, music, please.
Playing workout music.
Striving for mastery? You need speed, precision, and clarity of purpose. They all add up. Talent is not enough. You've got to prove that you're able to take advantage of unlimited opportunities when they come. And to do that, you need plenty of data. Scratch that. You need unlimited data. And there's no better provider of unlimited data
Access granted
than your all-powerful Glow router.
Whether home or office, enjoy unlimited data on a Glow router. Dial *312#.
You know, I've got unlimited eyes.
Glow Unlimited.
I'm still watching.
In most parts of the world, girl child are not recognized in a family. I hope all this problem holding down a girl child did not hold me down.
The idea behind the project is to identify schools that we think the parents are not economically empowered to sponsor their children to schools.
In demonstration of our commitment to reducing that number, we've come here today to provide some of the essentials that we believe would help the children in school. We worked with different schools in 5 states across the country, and we reached out to 15,000 children.
I want to be a food scientist, and Polaris Bank is helping me realize this dream. I'm perfectly excited.
When President Bola Ahmed Tinubu campaigned in 2023, he promised to build a better Nigeria. Today, savings from fuel subsidy removal has enabled state governments to pay salaries, develop infrastructure, and implement social welfare projects. In education, over 864,000 students across 263 tertiary institutions have benefited from the Nigerian Education Loan Fund. In health, 1,480 primary healthcare centers have been revitalized, with 5,500 being upgraded across the country. In empowerment, the 75 billion naira Presidential Intervention Fund for MSMEs, SMEDAN's 11 billion naira support for SMEs, and NDDC's 30 billion naira Youth Entrepreneurship Fund is creating jobs and empowering Nigerians. A lot is being done to fulfill the promises of President Tinubu to Nigerians. He will do more. A message from the All Progressives Congress, APC.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Joining us now for Word Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Reuben. Good morning, Vimbai.
Good morning,
Femi
Femu.
That's me.
Oko Babai.
Oh, gosh, that's also me, unfortunately. Good morning to you all. Good morning to you viewers. Let me tell you what's happening. Thank you. That's the correct one. Let me tell you what's happening around the world. Now, let's take a look at this picture here. This is Sanae Takaichi. Just 3 months ago, she became Japan's first woman prime minister, but she's just called for a snap election to be held on February 8th. Now, Japan's next general election isn't until October 2028. So why is she taking this risk now? Well, there are a few reasons. Firstly, she wants to create a mandate. She wants a proper, direct mandate. She wants voters to judge her directly on whether she should continue leading the country. Other than that, she's actually quite popular right now. So her personal popularity polls are relatively high early in her term, and calling for a vote now gives her the best chance to convert that popularity into a stronger parliamentary position before opinions shift. Now, after that, there's also the issue of regaining a parliamentary majority. Now, as it stands now, the ruling Liberal Democratic Party in Japan lost its clear majority in the 2024 general elections and then again in the 2025 upper house elections, forcing it into a very fragile coalition with the Japan Innovation Party. So her calling for an election means that a strong election result could give Takaichi a more stable majority in the lower house in order for her to pass legislation and become more effective. Now, Takaichi also wants voter backing for major policy shifts, her own advancement of her own policy agenda. That includes things like a temporary suspension of the 8% consumption tax on food in order to boost household budgets, as well as the economy. And then there's also the increased fiscal spending initiatives that she wants, as well as expanded defense outlays. And that's amid regional security concerns, especially when we're looking at the influence of China and Japan's support of Taiwan. So Takaichi's call for a snap election is a calculated move to seek voter approval, secure a stronger parliamentary majority, and legitimize her policy direction at a moment when her personal approval is relatively strong and the political landscape is volatile. So it does make sense for now. Takaichi will dissolve parliament this Friday, with the early election being held on the 8th of February. So we'll see how that works out for her. Moving on now, and the Kremlin has announced that Vladimir Putin has been invited to join Donald Trump's Board of Peace, set up last week with the intention that it would oversee a ceasefire in Gaza. Now, this alleged invitation, well, it's not alleged anymore because Trump has confirmed it a few hours ago. This invitation has been confirmed by Trump himself. Not so much by the White House, but Trump himself has confirmed it. And it does come as Putin shows no sign of ending his own war, his own occupation of Ukraine. Now, the Russian president has repeatedly rejected proposals of a ceasefire along the current front lines. Well, let's take a look at what we know so far as it stands, right? So here is the Gaza Peace Board in terms of appointments. So you've got Donald Trump himself. He is the chair of the Gaza Peace Board. And then along the bottom of the screen here, you see that there's a founding executive board, and that includes former Prime Minister Tony Blair, just on the bottom here. You've also got the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. You have the U.S. envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, this gentleman just here. You've got Jared Kushner, who is Trump's son-in-law, Ivanka's husband. And then you've got the leader, the president of the World Bank, AJ Banga. All of these people part of this board. Now, Trump has also reportedly sent invitations to leaders of a host of countries. So we've got the likes of Argentina, Belarus, Canada, Egypt, France. Who else have we got? We've got Paraguay, Russia, of course, Thailand, Turkey, and the United Kingdom. Now, France and Canada, they've both been invited, as we see on the graphic there. But there have been recent reports suggesting that both those countries are unlikely to accept this invitation. Let's take a listen to what Trump had to say when he was asked by journalists about France not really wanting to join.
You invited President Putin to be a member of the Board of Peace? Yeah, he's been invited. Did you give any response to President Macron saying he will not join the Board of Peace? Did say that? Well, nobody wants him because he's going to be out of office very soon. So, that's all right. What I'll do is if they feel like Costo, I'll put a 200% tariff on his wines and champagnes, and he'll join. But he doesn't have to join. If he said that, you're probably giving it to me a little bit differently. But if he actually did say that, but as you know, he's going to be out of office in a few months.
Now, did you hear that? Trump was asked about what he felt about Macron, they said, effectively denying this invitation. And he said, well, nobody wants him. But if you didn't want him, why did you invite him to join? Oh, we'll see. Anyhow, for those of us who, these other countries, other leaders who do want to join, each national leader would serve a maximum term of 3 years on the board. Let me get out of the way so you can see, because this isn't just about politics and peace and unity. There's real life money involved. So for those who do want to join, they would have a temporary seat for 3 years. That's unless their governments paid a $1 billion fee to become a permanent member. Now, this is interesting because if you know, it does sound a lot like Trump's elite membership package for his Mar-a-Lago estate and for his golf clubs. At this point, it's unclear who would be the recipient of such membership money and how that money would be used. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Let's also not forget that the ceasefire in Gaza, which the Board of Peace was originally meant to oversee, remains in limbo. Israel has continued its regular bombardment of Gaza while Trump and the rest of these leaders talk about membership fees. Staying with Trump, though, he has said that he no longer feels obliged to think only of peace. That was after he was not awarded the Nobel Peace Prize last year. Now, he sent a message to Norway's Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Store. And in that message, he said that considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace, although it will always be predominant, but can now think about what is good and proper for the United States. He goes on to say that the world is not secure unless we, the United States, have complete and total control of Greenland. Very strong words there in that message. Now, in response, the Norwegian Prime Minister explained, please, the Nobel Peace Committee, it's an independent committee. It's not the decision of the government of Norway. They don't award the prize, which, as we know, went last October to Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, who last week awarded her prize to Trump. And as you can see, it's clearly not enough to satisfy him. Okay, we'll get into that a bit later. Let's look at our newspaper headlines. As always, we begin with the front page of This Day. Now, This Day has a whole host of stories here. Our lead story this morning is the International Monetary Fund saying that Nigeria's recent economic reforms are beginning to show results, raising its 2025 growth forecast to 4.4% and projecting 4.1% growth for 2026 to 2027. Also on the front page, and our picture headline, is our Vice President Kashim Shettima, who inaugurated Nigeria House for the 2026 at the 2026 World Economic Forum happening in Davos. We have a strong contingent there, and it's marking the first ever sovereign Nigerian pavilion at the event. So huge congratulations to Nigeria. Moving on to The Advocate this week. Now, in this week's edition of Onikepo Braithwaite's column, she examines the death of the 21-month-old son of Nigerian novelist Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. She questions whether it was caused by medical negligence, an alleged propofol overdose, or a serious illness like meningitis. She also argues that only a proper autopsy and coroner's inquest can legally determine the cause. She also warns against a trial by public opinion and goes on to say that a cremation without an autopsy may have destroyed crucial evidence needed to prove or disprove negligence. Let's move on to the Daily Independent this morning. The Daily Independent reports that the federal government is leveraging a $500 million World Bank-backed bridge project to expand broadband access nationwide. Now, this plan aims to deploy up to 90,000 kilometers of fiber infrastructure and revive the fiber optic rollout. And that was after Nigeria missed its 70% penetration target under the 2020 to 2025 National Broadband Plan. So let's see if this one makes it over the line. Moving on to the Vanguard this morning. The Vanguard reports that Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has signed the 4.44 trillion naira 2026 appropriation bill into law, calling it the budget of shared prosperity.
Also on the front page of the Vanguard, there is news that the Kano State Governor, Abba Yusuf, is set to defect from the NNPP to the APC, with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu meeting him privately in Abuja ahead of the move. Now, the defection has delayed APC membership, e-registration in Kano, which will now start once Yusuf and the APC leader, Abdullahi Ganduje, return. Interesting times ahead. Let's take a look at the New Telegraph. Okay, so the New Telegraph reports that armed gangs kidnapped over 160 worshippers who were praying during Sunday services this weekend at two churches in Kurman Wali in Kaduna State. Now, police and church leaders confirmed the attack, saying gunmen with sophisticated weapons stormed the churches and forced worshippers into the forest. The Daily Sun, it does report that members of the Association of Indigenous Contractors of Nigeria, they blocked the Minister of State for Finance, that is Doris Uzoka Anite, from entering the Federal Ministry of Finance in Abuja on Monday over unpaid debts of about 4 trillion naira. That caused tension and a brief scuffle with security personnel. Now let's move on to our UK papers. So firstly, we've got the Daily Express. And Daily Express has a group of British nurses who won an employment tribunal after complaining about a transgender woman who used their hospital changing room. Moving on to the Metro, they've got quite a stark headline there. They're calling it a prize idiot. And this is all connected to that issue with Donald Trump and Norway. Norway's prime minister has said that he has repeatedly attempted to explain to Donald Trump that the Nobel Peace Prize he missed out on was not a snub by his country or his government. And lastly, we have The Sun. Family feuds, unfortunately. So we have Brooklyn Beckham, the first son of David and Victoria Beckham, and he says that he has cut his family off in an online attack. He posted 6 pages on his Instagram story on Monday evening. Now, according to the reports and those Instagram stories, he accused his mother, Victoria, of humiliating him at his wedding amid years of alleged control. So very unfortunate news there, but those are your well-brief stories and newspaper headlines. Love to hear your thoughts.
Christ, it's sad what's happening to the Beckham family. But real quickly, Vimbai, I will make that quote that you like a lot. Which one? François de la Rochefoucauld. Hypocrisy is the homage vice pays to virtue. So, just for reference, Trump is going to be 80, right?
Yes.
This year.
Yes.
I think around
July.
July.
Or June? June 14, 80. I think, something like that. You know, they have to move. They're trying to move the G7 so it doesn't clash with his birthday plans. We'll talk about that later.
We'll talk about that. See, the hypocrisy of Trump, because this is not reflective of America, and I'm going to exonerate America from it, but this is Trump. The hypocrisy of this man scares me. And he might cause chaos in the world, just like Hitler did. You remember that because Hitler didn't do well, didn't get into the Arts Academy, if you read Mein Kampf, those were part of the things that nursed his hate for establishments. Because of Nobel Prize, Trump is doing all of this. And the Nobel Prize, see, dear Donald Trump, stop blaming Norway. The Norwegian parliamentarians that decide who wins the Nobel Prize, they are just there to create independent buffer. The prize is really given by the Alfred Nobel Foundation. If you feel so hard that you want a prize, set up a Mar-a-Lago Foundation of Peace and give yourself prize every year.
In his own mind, that Obama won one, he can't get over. I think that's what it is.
No. Obama didn't lobby this way. And secondly, the largest level of hypocrisy, despite the fact that we have the United Nations there, which people like Trump and America has tried, I exonerate America again, because this is an era. This is a fleeting era. It will go someday. We've read history to that extent. So when you now see what he's doing, having a board of peace, which board of peace? I will turn that board of peace to board of hypocrisy. Board of peace? You want to collect 1 billion from people on the board of peace? When America gave 21.3 billion to the Israelis to destroy Gaza while the war was going on.
Yeah.
You want to call that board of peace? You destroyed Gaza. You kept on killing people. You had a peace deal that is next to nothing, that is not working. And you call this a board of peace after destroying an entire country? Then you go further. You set up this board of peace. Then you call in Russia and Belarus. Russia that is destroying Ukraine. I think the Board of Peace, save for some countries, beginning to look like an association of dictators, to me, as far as I'm concerned. Because you are calling in Russia and Belarus. We know what Lukashenko has done to his people. We know what Russia has done to Ukraine. We know what he did to Crimea. We know what he did to South Ossetia and Abkhazia. So you are justifying dictators on something you call a board of hypocrisy. I mean, anyway, we've seen things like this happen in history.
Thank you.
This too shall pass. It's not today. So, okay.
So let me begin with something that might raise Rufai's blood pressure. So I'm not mad at Donald Trump about Greenland. Greenland is a colony. So even if you look at the letter, he speaks about, so you lay claim to this land because a boat arrived there a few hundred years ago. We also had boats that arrived over there. The way it's being handled, I think, is shocking. However, my question is, how are we handling modern day colonies? Because that's what Greenland is. Denmark's claim over it, it's not, it's only a semi-autonomous nation.
Yes.
It is, for all intents and purposes, a Danish colony. Does it deserve to be recolonized by the United States? No, it doesn't. But it's unfortunate that in all of this, we're seeing this tussle where, in fact, there's a fight over who has the colonial powers over this territory. And nobody is asking the people of Greenland that maybe this is time for their independence. So maybe we Africans need to give them the spirit of liberation and independence so that they can realize that they don't need to function as anybody's colony. Now, that's on Greenland. Very quickly to the Board of Peace, which, for me, it looks like an attempt to recreate the world order that brought us to where we are today, which is that when the United Nations was created and the Bretton Woods organizations was created, what was the driving force? The driving force was reconstruction. The driving force was trying to get into Europe to help them with rebuilding themselves after the World War and using the dollar hegemony to be able to drive that development. And that's what we saw, creating the emergence of the world order as we know it today. Well, fast forward to today, where it seems that American hegemony no longer exists, and he's now looking for any aspect where he can create a new organization where Donald Trump, it's still unclear, but it seems that he would be the life chair of this board. So it doesn't restrict his term as a president of the United States, but even when his term ends, he will continue on as the life chairperson of this Gaza peace board, so to speak. However, I'm curious to see how it will play out once you put Egypt, there's a Qatari representative, and Turkey. Once you put them in the room with Israel, because we know that there are tense relations between those countries, that has every recipe to be explosive. I round up with Takaichi in Japan, who, my reservations with her are that she's driven a populist narrative based off of pushing anti-immigrant policies. But I love the fact that she said that I'm more popular than the appointment that brought me in. She's never won an election. She was appointed. And she believes she can increase the numbers of the ruling party by going to election, which is a bold move. Let's see how it plays out.
We'll see. Thanks very much.
Okay, very quickly. Denmark is not a colony. It's a semi-autonomous region of Denmark. It has its own prime minister. It has its own, parliament. And then the people also, who have been saying they have a choice in the matter. They say they would rather be part of Denmark than submit themselves to the United States. So President Trump saying the world cannot be secure except the United States seizes the territory of Greenland, even by a military option, if possible, as Caroline Leavitt has repeatedly pointed out, is a violation of the basic principle of international order. I've given the history about 2 times of the relationship between the US and Denmark. I do not intend to repeat that history this morning, except to say that the European countries are reacting. Now, Trump is threatening tariffs. They are threatening what is called the trade bazooka. The base bazooka is the anti-coercion instrument, which eventually is going to be to the negative interest of both the United States and Europe, generally, as we know it. However, it is interesting that President Trump, in the message to the Norwegian Prime Minister, is saying that, well, it is his ego, You people refuse to give me Nobel Peace Prize. Now, they don't issue out a Nobel Peace Prize as a political tool of a negotiation. I think President Trump needs to be educated in that regard. However, he's threatening tariffs up to 15% by February 1, up to 25% by June the 1st if negotiations fail. However, the Europeans are also fighting back. They met on Sunday. They are going to meet with President Trump tomorrow in Davos, including the Norwegian Prime Minister and the German Chancellor. And then on Thursday, the European Union Commission is going to have a meeting to determine what will be the retaliatory measures if President Trump goes ahead with his blackmail. That is that about Norway. Now, with Gaza Board of Peace, I think the key editorial point there is that it's a 3-tier proposal, 21-point plan by President Trump, which he's trying to see through. He is the chairman who is going to control everything. So whatever money that is going to come
chairman.
He's Chairman Trump.
Life chairman.
Of that Gaza board that is going to be in charge. But he has put together strange bedfellows, pro-Israel figures like Marco Rubio, Jared Kushner, and then controversial figures like Tony Blair.
Yes.
But the major point that I think should be made here is that the Palestinians are put in the 3rd tier of the 3-tier structure, which makes this a real estate neo-colonial structure that the Americans are putting together in collusion with the Israelis. However, you mentioned Russia. Russia is saying it's going to study the nuances involved.
Yes.
As for Japan, Takaishi, the Prime Minister, popularity as a result of the issue with China, but there are political issues. There are also social, economic issues, which is why she's now saying consumption tax is going to be reduced. The 8% consumption tax on food.
Yes.
And the other levy of 10%, so that government can reduce the cost of living and inflation that is already above 2% target. So you look at the economic side, you look at the political side to shore up the popularity, not just of herself, but also of the party.
Indeed.
Well, thank you very much. We'll take a short break now, and when we return, we'll be talking to an environmentalist, retired Air Vice Marshal Kenneth Iyamu. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
In the beating heart of Owerri, business never sleeps. From sunrise to sundown, the wheels keep turning. And behind the scenes, vision meets action. Governor Hope Uzodimma's leadership has turned manifestos into reality, transformations that feels like a miracle. But progress needs peace, and in Imo, it's not left to chance. From land to sky to river deep, Guardians are watching, protecting dreams and opportunity. At Orashi's quiet shore, hydropower is rising, set to energize a growing economy. The change is visible. New roads emerge, industry hums, communities come alive. At the center, a digital revolution. 500,000 young minds trained each year to build the future. As Orashi rises, so does Imo and the hopes of a hard-working people. A new Imo is on the rise.
Thinking of banking in Africa? Think Zenith. In today's fast-moving, fast-changing world, you need a financial partner that understands your unique expectations. A bank digitally connected across Africa and global financial centers with the enabling platform to facilitate seamlessly whenever, wherever, however. A bank with smart financial solutions from a systemized blend of technology and human touch. For easy, fast, and secure banking that creates real value. Turning dreams into reality is now in your hands. People, technology, service. Zenith Bank, in your best interest.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. What leaders from government, business, civil society, and academia have convened on Davos to engage in discussions to address global issues and set priorities. The call for bold collective action makes the meeting particularly relevant. Discussions are centered around 5 key global challenges: cooperation in a contested world, unlocking new sources of growth, investing in people, deploying innovation responsibly, and building prosperity within planetary boundaries. Now, joining us on this show to discuss issues that will shape discussions in Davos, from climate change and the opportunities for Nigeria, is AVM Kenneth Iyamo, retired, an environmentalist. Good morning, AVM Iyamo, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Dr. Reuben. Good morning. Good morning, Rufai.
Morning,
and
sir.
Good morning, our Nigerian wife.
Good morning, sir.
Morning. She's proudly Nigerian wife. Anyway, very quickly, sir. Now,
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, I mean, we have outlined the key issues at this session of the World Economic Forum with the theme, The Spirit of Dialogue. But it looks like there isn't so much emphasis on climate change. We were discussing all of that with Rutu Sodiri this morning, even if it's one of the priorities, because the global north seems to be insincere, well, let me say hypocritical, about all the climate change action proposals that the world has been discussing in the last few years. Why do you think that is the case?
Yes, thank you for having me, and thank you, viewers, too. You see, if you check the item of engagement, you see that extreme weather, climate change is even a milder term. Extreme weather is featuring very prominently. Don't forget, the World Economic Forum has placed climate change as one of the biggest risks in the world. Biggest risk in the world. And they are now creating a system-wide action, a service-wide action, and a country-wide action, and bringing the voices together to talk on climate change. Because what is now happening is, you see, it is coming at the heels of the Sustainability Summit. Sustainability Summit, see, the world is at a point where we have to act responsibly, where you have to use resources and do not jeopardize what the next generation is going to have. Certainly, the resources of the world cannot be replenished at the rate that we are taking it away. If you go back to COP30, now they brought on board to say that, look, this is the time to implement the Paris Agreement. It's not talking every time. We're going to implement it. The Paris Agreement is one of the biggest treaties in the world to have been signed. It's very ambitious. It allows countries to be ambitious, which is what Davos is also looking at. In fundamentals, Davos is trying to bring environmental effort into economic prosperity, which is very important. Because if you don't do that, you are going to have the poor of the world increasing every day. And they want to actually sensitize carbon credit, carbon offset, everything that have to deal with carbon, because the extreme weather of 2025, don't forget 2025 was the third hottest year in history. 220 billion was destroyed, and 40 billion of that is coming from the United States alone. So there's an economic aspect which they really need to look into. And the global south are the one paying dearly for this. They're the one paying dearly for this. If you look at it, the World Economic Forum since 1971, a gathering of a lot of people, classes, because they put them together before it was renamed in 1987, have always bring people together to create a service-wide voice to be able to talk on what is very paramount in the world at any particular time. And at this time we are talking, it is extreme weather and climate change.
Okay, Avia, I see that you are very optimistic, but about, all these discussions around the extreme weather, climate change. But how about the role of the United States, the world's primary power? Around 2025 or so, or earlier, 2022, 2015, the U.S. withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement. This year, the U.S. has withdrawn from about 66 international organizations, or thereabouts, 31 UN-related international organizations, 35 non-related UN organizations. One of these organizations is the United Nations Convention on Climate Change, the UNFCCC. Now, how is that likely to impact on this positive expectation about climate change action? Because the US is just the primary person, and what's his name, President Trump, is the star of this WEF.
Chairman Trump, please. Chairman Trump.
Chairman President
yes,
Trump.
You see, we've been through this route before. 2017, he left. Just, you give a 5 years moratorium before you activate the articles. Before activating it, President Biden came in and restored it. Now, what you will ask yourself, what are the indices? You will expect most of the indices to go down. No, electric vehicles have increased. Everything is increasing. The EU renewable energy has soared. So that vacuum is really not felt. It's really not felt, and it's likely not to be felt, because the world is calling the bluff and say, look, we have to survive. We have to survive, and we have to do the needful. Now, like I said before, the Paris Agreement is there. It's the first document that tied the whole world together. It created an ambition, and COP30 gave everybody, look, it was reviewing the national determined contribution, reviewing everything. The world is moving ahead. The world is moving ahead, because the real solution now for, like you say, carbon credit, which is the incentive for verifiable carbon offset, the other part of the world, they are going ahead with it. They are encouraging the developing countries. Look, you see, we are now giving you the tradable platform to be able to sell your carbon. You see a country like Nigeria, the president the other day was talking about 3 billion. So the Sustainability Summit opened up a 100 billion green financing to be unlocked before 2030. Okay. So the world is moving. Let me just land on this. It's now how it's going to create the noise it's making to the streets and to the mindset of every citizens of the world.
And this is, I think, the imperative point for me, especially when we connect this with what's happening at Davos, at the World Economic Forum, is that the noise needs to be made, the conversations need to be had, but these fora that used to focus on these issues that were more multipolar by nature and more inclusive of global South development are now determined by the whims of the President of the United States. So we know that once he gives his address tomorrow, it's going to determine the pace and the conversation. How do we position these conversations that are inclusive for global South when we know that they are, I'll use our own term, strong men, if I may call him that, Donald Trump. We know that they are strong men who come and bulldoze all these agendas in favor of the ones that are imperative or of top priority to his own agenda.
How many speeches had been given before? How many? Did they affect the world? You see, the trajectory of the World Economic Forum since 1971, it was originally created for the European countries to study the economy of America before it was renamed. Now, it is very interesting that you have to note, Xi Jinping is not attending. Narendra Modi is not attending. That creates a whole lot of things for you to think about. And these people are the ones driving the renewable energy and the electric vehicles. So if the speech that will be there tomorrow, I'm sure a lot of people have already anticipated it, and they are creating an antidote to it. See, the whole of the climate platform is like a buffet. Countries are picking the ones that best affect them. The EU is picking the one that best affect them. China is picking the one that best affect them. The whole world is picking the one that best affect them, and they are looking at it in that particular way. You see, they know you have done this before, so it is not new. It is not new, and they are waiting. So I bet you when he gives that speech tomorrow, there's not going to be so much out of it because they have already prepared the shock absorbers and they are ready for it.
Okay. The sad thing about that buffet is that, as with everything, Africa is not always on the table. We are always at the back picking the crumbs. Just like Berlin Conference, where they shared Africa's wealth behind them, behind Africa as a continent, with nobody being there. Just like this climate conversation too, that they've shared everything without Africa being there. We have no role, we have no say. And that's why at first I want you to talk us through the climate hypocrisy, the climate politics, and let me say, the climate poverty Africa is facing vis-a-vis the climate charity that they are giving to Africa, because we were a charity case. Most of the people that are going there from Nigeria, they are just going there to hear the speech and see how much climate funds can be released, and they will say they will do some small project and they will put money in their pockets in the name of one NGO. Man must shop, nah? Now climate hustle. So where does Africa play in all of these things? The climate hypocrisy, climate economy, and climate charity. Because it's just, we are going there to see that there's one fund somewhere so that we can write grants and they will get the fund and will say we are doing something too. We are not anywhere. True reality.
You see, I will slightly toe a different line from you altogether. Now, the Nigeria that you know, Africa and everywhere, are taking the bull by the horns. They are taking the destiny in their hands. I tell you, now you heard of IFRS S1 and S2. What do they mean? They are benchmarked for environmental social governance, which Nigeria is taking the lead for Africa. They were benched in 2023 by the International Standards Sustainability Board. What are we now doing? They are looking inward to say, look, we have to create sustainability. The climate finance is not Father Christmas. You really have to work very, very hard for it. And where I will agree with you here, when we went for the sustainability summit, I expected our marine and blue economy to be very forthcoming. But here we load vigor, we load imagination, we load creativity, and we load organization. So we missed that fund, that $100 billion fund for marine, because we have a lot of things now to sell for carbon credits, particularly in Nigeria, particularly for Africa. Don't forget, COP32, we missed it, and that was a very big blow. It would have given us the opportunity, again, after Sharm el-Sheikh, for Africa to showcase itself, particularly for Nigeria. You have a lot of things going for you. You have 4% of the untouched forest. You have 854 kilometer shoreline. The trees, please, that takes me back to the FCT. You see, the way our ecosystem is being destroyed in the FCT is not going to support the president's cry for 3 billion carbon credits. The green area, they are not ad hoc, they are deliberate. You don't plant a tree today and call it a green area. No. Those are the kind of things that the FCT administration should be told, that the economic value that is coming from allocating the green area does not support what the destruction is bringing. So Africa, Nigeria is taking the lead, and we have to really commend them for that. Yes.
I know because you're on TV, we can't talk. But if we talk apart from TV, it's still the same thing we are saying. It's climate beggy we are going to do. 3 billion funds that they will release onto us. It's still to beg one way or the other. I mean, we are not. Why is that we are not the ones releasing the money for the carbon credit? It's still the climate beggy we are doing. It's still part of the hustle now. I'm saying because I want Africa to grow. It's the truth. It's the truth.
Well,
Dr. Abati.
As we begin to wrap up, I would like you to talk about Nigeria. Okay, I've heard all about carbon credit and all that, but Nigeria is rated 17th on the CPPI, which is the global, a measurement of allegiance, of compliance with the climate change goals. Nigeria is suffering from extreme weather, either in terms of rising temperatures or low rainfall. Nigeria is very low in terms of renewable energy. Nigeria is very low in terms of climate change policy, despite the fact that we have a climate action policy, I think 2022 or thereabouts. So, what is Nigeria really doing? Because we are not, we are talking about carbon credit, but we are responsible for a very high rate of GH emissions. So it looks like there isn't significant progress in terms of Nigeria's involvement in this. We are even talking about increasing oil and gas production, so which will contribute further to the problem with energy crisis. And in spite of the energy transition program that we claim we have in place. Briefly, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Doctor, for this incisive detail. You see, for any country to grow, you must first of all become what you are before becoming what you want to become. Now, when the compressed natural gas was brought on board, on this TV, we said, look, that's the wrong way to go. That money should have gone for EV, because EV is one of the selling points for carbon credits. Very selling point. Because if we have oil pollution at a very high rate, we still have deforestation, we have this desertification, and we have poor energy penetration. The compressed natural gas shouldn't have been the way to go at all. Now, going back, you see, you have to invest. If you create activities without work, it's never going to work. Our climate policy, who is running it? Is it the ministry? Is it the National Commission for Climate Change? Who is running it? The National Commission for Climate Change need to come out and be more visible. Except when it gets to a conference of parties, you don't really hear them. You don't really hear them. Now, the whole world, everybody, every consultant, environmentalist and all, we know ourselves. And we talk to each other. See, Nigeria needs to do more. Nigeria needs to do more because our oil pollution is still very high, and that does not attract carbon credit at all. We need electricity penetration, and like that's why I said before, it's a buffet. The carbon credit is a tradable permit that enables you to do 1 ton of carbon dioxide, reduce it, remove it, or make sure that it doesn't exist in the world. And all of them, what are the benefits from it? You are going to get renewable energy. It enables the advanced country to come and invest. It's foreign direct investment. And that is what, because it needs rigor, because it needs imagination, because it needs creativity, because it needs organization. We are not looking in that direction. Okay. The oil sale is going down, and we have to be very creative. It is very important.
Okay, AVM, thank you very much. Although this is your reference to buffet. Nigerians don't understand what a buffet is. So I've seen people who mix gari with jollof rice and also put salad by the side. And then they will put okra on top of it. Maybe that's a source of our confusion. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. We'll take a short break now. And when we return, we'll be talking to Dr. Eva Umeozo, a global oil and gas expert and the founder of PropTech. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
I am the chef of life.
Mr. Chef, it's a two-finger crush.
Pass with the chicken and
I am the chef of life.
With Mr. Chef, a simple crush turns meals into culture and moments into memories.
This is the true taste of home
and culture.
Chef of life.
Coming soon to over 500 million smartphone users and 1.5 billion voices. Leke, the social platform for the world, out of Africa. By the founders of Arise and This Day Media Group, we're going to be launching with a big bang. A new homegrown social platform born in Africa and built for the world, blending community, culture, and cutting-edge AI. It's fast, culturally rooted, data-friendly, and designed to scale globally. A digital platform for youth, creators, and business. A one-stop shop to connect, share, create, and earn. It's time to end social media imperialism. This is Leke, a voice for all.
Do your style, show your smile. Do your future, show your tutor. Do your stream, share your dream. Do your passion, share your fashion. Do your pain, show your game. Do your friendship, share your time. Do your laughter, make it true. With Glow YouTube.
Do you. 250 Naira for 5 hours. 600 Naira for 14 hours. Dial *312#.
With Glow YouTube bundles. Do you?
Glow Unlimited.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Now, the Nigerian oil and gas industry has frequently been in the news for various reasons. Decades before the Petroleum Industry Act, PIA, was enacted in August 2021, the country's oil and gas exploration sector faced significant challenges due to unclear rules, changing policies, and low investor confidence. Recently, there was a change in the boards and management of the two industry regulators, the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, NUPRC, and the Nigerian Midstream Downstream Regulatory Agency, the NMDPRA. While speaking during a stakeholders meeting last week in Lagos, the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, Orishemeyiwa Eyeson, outlined the agenda for repositioning Nigeria's upstream petroleum sector, with a focus on production optimization, revenue expansion, and regulatory efficiency. She said her vision for the upstream sector rests on 3 pillars: production optimization, revenue expansion, regulatory predictability, and speed, and safe, governed, and sustainable operations. Well, according to her, the agenda aligns with President Bola Tinubu's Renewed Hope initiative and the administration's production targets of 2 million barrels of oil per day by 2027 and 3 million barrels per day by 2030. Joining us on the show today to discuss ways we can improve, regulate and boost our oil and gas sector is Dr. Eva Umeozo, a global oil and gas expert. He's a founder of PROCTEM, that's a pioneering project economics modeling SaaS application for upstream and downstream oil and gas project economics modeling analysis, which also includes all the regimes of Nigeria's upstream economic fiscal analysis. So given this, he will also share his thoughts on the impact of the U.S. invasion of Venezuela on the global oil market. Good morning and welcome to the program today.
Good morning.
Morning.
It's my pleasure to be here this morning.
Dr. Umeozo, let's go from the general to the particular. The biggest news in recent times is the U.S. invasion of Venezuela and seizure of what President Trump refers to as sanctioned vessels. And of course, the U.S. has taken about $500 million worth of Venezuelan oil. Now, what do you think will be the impact on the oil and gas industry internationally in the short term and the long term? And then is there any implication for Nigeria, particularly at this time that Nigeria is doing licensing round and licensing bid rounds and looking for investors from all over the world?
Thank you so much, Dr. Abati, for having me on the show. It's my pleasure to be here, viewers at home. First of all, I would like to say that this morning I'm going to be sharing my personal perspectives and the ideas and the opinions that I share today are basically mine and not like from any of my affiliations. So I would say if you look at the global oil system, we basically categorize the oil supplies globally based on the density and the sulfur content. So on the density part, we grade the oils using what we call the degree of API gravity. So on the degree of API gravity, which tells you how dense the oil is, so it goes, it can go from 0 up to maybe in the 50s, right? 50 degrees API gravity. So now, so the higher the API gravity, the less dense the crude is. So now, the crude oil from Venezuela, we all know it's like they have a huge reserves, but it is predominantly of the crude that has a lower API, which is very dense, right? So typically we categorize these crudes on the scale of density and API, where we say we categorize heavy crude as crudes that have 25 degrees API or less. And then we have what we call the medium crude in terms of the density, which are the ones that are that have the API degree of API gravity of from 25 to around 34. And then you have the heavy crudes, which are the ones that have API gravity of from 34 and above. Now, the other metric that's also used to categorize crude is the other metric that's used is also the sulfur content, right? So now the sulfur content, typically we would categorize this crude into two. So we have the sweet and the sour. So the sweet crude is one that has a lower sulfur content. So, and we normally use a threshold of about 0.6% volume of sulfur in the crude. So if the sulfur content is below 0.6% of the volume, we say it is sweet. If it's higher than that, we say it is sour. So on this basis, we categorize all global crudes into 6 different types. So the first, which is the one that is of interest now, especially as pertaining Venezuela, is the heavy sour crude. So the heavy sour crude, which means high density and high sulfur content. So, and then you have the heavy sweet crude, which is high density and low sulfur content. And you also have the medium sour, the medium sweet, the light sweet, and the light sour. Now, with regards to Venezuela, Venezuela's crude is predominantly of the Venezuelan supply is predominantly of the heavy sour grade.
All right, I just want to butt in at this stage, at the risk of the conversation becoming a little bit too technical for some of us who are not specialists in this subject area. Thank you for, giving those categorical differences, because they matter when we're looking at where oil prices are going to go, given the impact of what we're seeing in Venezuela, potential of tension flaring up in Iran, and of course, other factors. So I'd love to get your analysis. Where do you see the price of oil going this year? And secondly, do you foresee in 2026 us being able to make any real sustainable inroads at reducing the production price per barrel here in Nigeria? Because we know that that's one of the most sticking points that's, that's stopping us from really being able to enjoy the benefit of our oil revenue and is also a hindrance to investment.
So the issue and the reason I wanted to lay that background is because the type of crude determines the price, especially the break-even price. That means which is the cost of supplying that crude. And also the type of crude determines the type of refining that it needs. Now, the US going into Venezuela and in the hopes that we would have a lot of supply of heavy sour crude, which is currently predominantly now supplied from Canada, right? So Canada supplies about 2 million barrels, 1.8 million barrels per day of this heavy sour to the US. And if you look at the break-even price in terms of when you take into account all the costs that are needed to produce each barrel, for Canada is around $36 per barrel. For the Venezuelan, the same heavy sour from Venezuela currently is around $39 per barrel. Now, if you just oppose that with Nigeria, predominantly we produce mostly medium sweet and light sweet crude, right, which are split almost 50-50%. And if you look at the supply cost of that, the break-even price is around $34 per barrel, which is apparently lower than that of the crude coming from Canada or coming from Venezuela. Now, the total volumes currently coming from Venezuela before the US issue with the US or US taking Maduro away from the country was around 1 million barrels, right? And of which this 1 million barrels, about 45% of that volume was going to China. And about 10%, only about 10% currently goes to the US. Whereas the Canadian production, about 85% of that production from Canada goes to the US, and only about 10% or 14% of that goes to China from Canada. So we are seeing, recently we saw China and Canada signing a trade agreement that's worth about $1 trillion. So what we are seeing, if the US manages to control the supplies from Venezuela, what would happen, what I expect to see is that perhaps the Canadian crude can be redirected, more of the volumes from Canada can go to China. But also, in the short term, I think we saw reaction from the market where prices seem a bit depressed right now and the reason is because there is this expectation of over 300 billion barrels of reserves coming into the market. But I mean, that's not going to be easy to come into the market because first of all, we see, like I mentioned, the break-even price you need to produce this heavy sour from Venezuela is really high. And if you take into account factors like the country risk, because I mean, historically, Venezuela was known to have seized assets for various producers who invested in the country. So you have the country risk, which could potentially impact on the willingness of investors to come in.
Okay.
Now, if you bring that down, if you bring that in the context of Nigeria.
Yeah. Finish up the point, Dr.
So in the context of Nigeria as well. Yeah, so in the context of Nigeria, you see, like the heavy sour is not the type of grade that's produced here. So in terms of grade competitiveness, Nigeria doesn't have any direct competition with Venezuela or Canada on this aspect. But overall, in terms of overall supplies coming into the market, when there is a market sentiment of excess supply in the market, this would depress prices. But then the excess supply coming into the market will require a lot of investment, which will require also time. Okay. And there's a lot of other factors that go into actually bringing that supply into the market.
All right, Dr. Iva, I mean, thank you so much for your analysis. It just shows it's not going to work because the price of producing the crude in Venezuela is about $88. They're selling for about $24. Chevron has said they're not going to make investment in that because, like you said, country risk exists. And it's not going to really cause any real depression in the market. I mean, the last time America churned out their crude from their national reserves, I think it was about 0.15 cents to about 0.05 cents or 0.50 cents. I mean, that's the add-on to the market. So there's not going to be anything much. I want you to talk about the bid rounds in Nigeria. How can we maximize that process effectively?
Yeah, so with regards to the bid rounds, at the end of the day, what we are trying to do, the expectation in Nigeria and the desire in Nigeria is to attract investment. Attracting investment in Nigeria means you have to create the enabling environment for investors to come. Investors need to feel that their investment will be secure and issues with pipeline disruptions and, I mean, theft of crude oil would be minimized. And the fiscal regimes that actually becomes operative would be one that is favorable for investors to make return on their investments. So on that regard, all the recent changes and with the PIA coming in, with the law designed in a way to improve attractiveness, investment attractiveness in Nigeria. And also with the open bidding rounds that's been introduced to bring more, make more transparency and make it more, also, provide the data that's required for potential investors to be able to understand the economic returns that could potentially be garnered from their investment in Nigeria. These are positives, but also the ability to be able to run physical simulation scenarios. Like, I mean, in some of your recent interviews, you've had like guys here who talk about the need to have a national model, upstream fiscal model that enables you to run fiscal simulations and scenarios to understand the implications of various cost structures on investment attractiveness, on the supply competitiveness of Nigerian crude in the international market. So now we have these tools, which has been developed under the Proctem umbrella that enables you to automatically run these fiscal scenarios from anywhere using a cloud-based system. You can understand how various cost structures, both from the angle of the government and the angle of the investor, to understand the economic implications of that.
Okay, Dr. Amozo. I mean, some of those things that you said, the NUPRC in Nigeria should do to provide an enabling environment. I think Mrs. Eyisan said as much. But you now mentioned Proctem, which is the fiscal, analysis tool system that you founded. I tried to look for you on social media, on the internet. I couldn't find, Proctem there. Maybe it's my phone that is misbehaving. Some of these phones are old models. Just tell us very briefly what Proctem is all about. And you already started. And now,
so yeah, Proctem is yes. So Proctem is a fiscal upstream economic simulation tool that enables you to run physical simulations for all the various upstream regimes that we've had in Nigeria, whether it's production sharing, the recent PIA contracts. So we have all the 5 upstream fiscal regimes that enables you to see investments under various cost structures, under various funding scenarios, how that translates to return on investment for investors, the government revenues as well, in this case, like revenues flowing into NNPC. And also, if you're an auditing firm, you can also understand how various cost composition and cost structures impact on revenues of both government and investors. So Proctem is available online. The website is www.proctem.com, and is a tool that's accessible. Is a tool that's accessible. You can actually go on there. All you need to do is provide the asset profile. So all you need to do is provide asset profile, what your production profile is.
Fantastic. I think those who engage with it will delve deeper, but thank you for that insight, into some new technology as well as into the general state of the oil and gas industry in Nigeria and globally. We'll take a short break now, and when we return, we'll be joined by Rolake Akinkube Filani, live from Davos, Switzerland, to give us a wrap-up on the first day of the World Economic Forum Annual Meeting 2026. Do stay with us.
In this life, it's what you do behind that shows in front.
Now we know. Give us the fire. Tell us more. It's Cosmo or nothing. Luxury or not, this is Cosmo.
That's why I roll with Cosmo deodorant. No sweat, no stains, no odor.
Now you know.
Cosmo roll-on whitening deodorant.
All day freshness, 7 days a week from GVS Cosmetics.
Buying your Airpiece ticket just got easier with Fidelity Bank. When you book on flyairpiece.com, choose Fidelity payment options and complete your payment effortlessly. With Fidelity Bank, you can pay with transfer, fast, secure, and powered by Fidelity. Buy now, pay later, enjoy flexible payments, and travel stress-free. Book on hold. Lock in your travel plans and pay when you're ready. Whichever you choose, every transaction is quick, seamless, and protected. No stress, no hassle. Just smooth payments every time. Because with Fidelity Bank, flying Airpiece isn't just about getting there, it's about getting there with ease. Fly Airpiece. Pay the Fidelity way. Simple, safe, convenient. Visit flyairpiece.com to get started.
We are Fidelity. We keep our word.
Coming soon to over 500 million smartphone users and 1.5 billion voices. Leke, the social platform for the world, out of Africa. By the founders of Arise and This Day Media Group, we're going to be launching with a big bang. A new homegrown social platform born in Africa and built for the world, blending community, culture, and cutting-edge AI. It's fast, culturally rooted, data-friendly, and designed to scale globally. A digital platform for youth, creators, and business. A one-stop shop to connect, share, create, and earn. It's time to end social media imperialism. This is Leke, a voice for all.
All right, welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Now joining us live for more updates from the World Economic Forum in beautiful Davos, Switzerland is Arise correspondent and Arise Business Week anchor Rolake Akinkube Filani, who's looking equally as beautiful as the scenery in the Swiss Alps. Good morning, Rolake. How are you today?
Good morning, Vimbai. Good to see you all. I'm indoors today, actually, so no scenery, but we'll make do.
All right. Well, day one of Davos has just wrapped up, of course, yesterday. Now, from the opening ceremony to the early conversations, what kind of Davos have we stepped into this year?
Very interesting question. Of course, day one, we had this grand opening ceremony that was full of AI visuals and classical music. The main speaker there was the CEO of the World Economic Forum, Borge Brende, and his message was very clear and unequivocal, and it was really listen to different voices on the global stage. This was a message that was shared and corroborated by the co-chairs of the World Economic Forum. So that was a really poignant moment, I think, against the backdrop of all the tensions we've talked about. And I think what was pretty clear was that there needs to be some firm resolution to some of the key standout disputes at Davos this year. And I think the opening ceremony clearly delivered that.
Okay. You anchored the opening of Nigeria House. How significant was that moment, and what message was Nigeria deliberately sending to the global investment community?
Well, the opening of Nigeria House was quite monumental. We had a few teething issues, but in the end, I even had to step in as an anchor for the program at the last minute. Like delays. So it started in very an eventful way. But I think the highlight was really around the launch of the investor playbook by the Federal Ministry for Industry, Trade and Investment. The Honorable Minister, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, MFR, did that launch. And we also had a keynote address by His Excellency, the Vice President, Senator Kashim Shettima, GCON, and their messages were very clear. I think there were two things that particularly stood out. The Vice President did say that one of the reasons they had been intentional about actually establishing a physical Nigeria House at Davos was to, in his words, rewrite the wrongs of the past. And this idea that Nigeria needed to take her place on the global stage in a more visible way. I think the second thing that which was a takeaway from the speech by the Honorable Minister, was the fact that Nigeria is not a speculative story. And that really stood out and stuck with many of the participants. We also had participating at that event the Honorable Minister for Science and Technology, Dr. Kingsley Uday-San, and we had the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry for Solid Minerals representing the Honorable Minister for Solid Minerals, Dele Alake. We then had coming in halfway through the segment, His Excellency, the Foreign Affairs Minister, Ambassador Yusuf Tugar. So you could clearly see that the launch of Davos, Nigeria House at Davos, and the Investor Playbook was a collaborative effort. And the message was, we're not just ready to do business, but we're open for business. We want to showcase the reforms of the government on the international stage. And more importantly, Nigeria is not a speculative story.
That's great. That's great, despite the teething problems there. I mean, America is the big elephant in the room, already dominating conversations. You know, so from the U.S. House, the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's comment, what is the U.S. signaling? And also, what should we expect from day two? Maybe you can just, broach over the anticipated speech by Donald Trump.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. I think day 2 is already packed. There are 3 broad questions that are defining day 2. The first is really around innovation, AI, and energy security. And we can expect on the energy security session a keynote address by the Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol, as well as the CEO of BHP Billiton. And I think the merging of energy security with AI and innovation is an interesting nexus, because we have another discussion where we see the CEO, Amin Nasser of Saudi Arabia's Aramco, on a panel talking about innovation and AI. And it just goes to show how there's sort of cross-sectoral thinking around how artificial intelligence and technology will drive the future of many of the key industries around the world. We also have some very important statements and remarks by Emmanuel Macron, the president of France. We expect him to be making some remarks on the current state of tension between Europe, NATO, and of course the US. We also will be expecting US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who actually I bumped into on the promenade yesterday outside USA House. He had a media engagement where he talked about the fact that any planned retaliation from the European Union in relation to the Greenland dispute would be, and I quote, unwise. So very strong words there from the US. We expect him to reiterate that. And I think the final 2 remarks we should be looking out for will be by Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. We've seen how he's reaching across the aisle to engage deeper with China. We expect him to talk about China-Canada relations. And finally, Ursula von der Leyen, Commissioner of the European Union, who we also expect some very strong words in terms of geopolitics, technology, and particularly around regulation of AI and the digitization across key sectors in the European Union. So it's going to be a packed schedule today. And for Nigeria House today, the focus is on energy. A keynote from Wale Tinubu, CEO of Oando, and more importantly, later around 4 p.m. in the afternoon, we expect the coordinating minister for the economy, Finance Minister Wale Edu, to also deliver his keynote, and Arise will be there live to sort of hear what he has to say and hopefully convey that to our audience and to you in the studio.
Thank you very much, Rolake, and all the best with the weather in that very cold city of Davos. We take a short break now, and still to come. Calamity averted after Lagos diesel tanker overturns. Details in what's trending. We've been by Mutihiri Ekpeyong after this break. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
As far as your eyes can see, you can own it. Built on integrity, surrounded by nature, a place where you feel alive. With golf course, amusement park, artificial lake, sports centers, residential and commercial spaces. Be among the first to invest for greater returns and a new lifestyle. Utu exclusive. Live, play, relax. Invest today.
In the beating heart of Owerri, business never sleeps. From sunrise to sundown, the wheels keep turning. And behind the scenes, vision meets action. Governor Hope Uzodinma's leadership has turned manifestos into reality, transformations that feels like a miracle. But progress needs peace, and in Imo, it's not left to chance. From land to sky to river deep, Guardians are watching, protecting dreams and opportunity. At Orashi's quiet shore, hydropower is rising, set to energize a growing economy. The change is visible. New roads emerge, industry hums, communities come alive. At the center, a digital revolution. 500,000 young minds trained each year to build the future. As Orashi rises, so does Imo and the hopes of a hard-working people. A new Imo is on the rise.
In most parts of the world, girl child are not recognized in the family. I hope all this problem holding down a girl child did not hold me down.
The idea behind the project is to identify schools that we think the parents are not economically empowered to sponsor their children to schools.
In demonstration of our commitment to reducing that number, we've come here today to provide some of the essentials that we believe would help the children in school. We worked with different schools in 5 states across the country, and we reached out to 15,000 children.
I want to be a food scientist, and Polaris Bank is helping me realize this dream. I'm perfectly excited.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Joining us now with stories trending around the world is Vimbai Mutihiri Ekpeyon. Vimbai, you've been here all along, so just take it from there.
Yes, just a little bit of multitasking this morning, but we're up to the task. Let's kick off with some reactions to our lead story that we took yesterday. Of course, that was all about the report from the New York Times. Now, the International Society for Civil Liberties and Rule of Law, that's Inter-Society, has accused the New York Times of falsifying parts of its report that told how the United States relied on its often, and I quote, unverified information to assert claims of a Christian genocide in Nigeria. In the report published on Sunday, the New York Times said Emeka Umeagbalasi, Inter-Society founder, admitted that he often does not verify his data, amongst other allegations discrediting his research. Well, in a statement on Monday, Inter-Society accused the American newspaper of spinning a perfidy of lies in its report. The statement, co-signed by Umeagbalasi and other Inter-Society officials, said that it was shocked and totally disappointed at the lies injuriously credited to the organization, saying they were never part of the interview that lasted for not less than 3 hours. They said, and I quote, New York Times lied when it falsely claimed that our board chair admitted that he often does not verify his data, the statement reads. The organization listed its data collection processes, allegedly mentioned during the interview, to include primary or directly generated and secondary or indirectly or third-party generated. The statement concluded by saying Umeagbalasi is proudly a successful, lawful, and legitimate screwdriver salesman. And just to add to that, we've also seen some solidarity reports, solidarity statements from other organizations, specifically Equipping the Persecuted USA. And Equipping the Persecuted USA are saying, in essence, and I quote, the story told in that New York Times article is not just wrong, it is an injury added to an open wound. It tries to turn survivors into suspects, truth tellers into propagandists, and a decade of blood into a clever narrative to be managed by consultants in Washington and Abuja. It will not stand. So, just a expected reply from that New York Times article that we discussed at great length yesterday, and a number of issues that we had already pointed out. But good to see that Mr. Umeagbalasi has now made his response. Dr. Abati.
Okay. Well, I mean, there is the right of reply. There is the right of feedback. And then that story, of course, published in the Washington Post, I think January 18, was quite sensational because the story went to conclude that President Trump acted on the basis of the intelligence provided by New York Times, by information provided by a trader in school drivers and wrenches in the Onitsha market. And we said that could be potentially provocative, given the delicate balance of religious and ethnic sentiments in Nigeria. And now the gentleman that was mentioned in that story has now said many of the things that were reported were not the things that he told the reporter, who was named as the West African Bureau Chief of the New York Times, Ruth McLean. And she was accompanied by two other persons, a Kwara State Christian photographer and a reporter for This Day newspaper, Dave Eleke, who is well known, reportedly, to the particular gentleman that is on the screen. So they have now said, well, you know, the inter-society chieftain did not say that Muslims were being, Christians were being massacred. That what he said was that both Muslims and Christians are victims of persecution, and also that, you know, generally, the reporter, Ruth McLean, put words into his mouth and also lied about the data that was provided. The main argument is that, look, they're not a media outfit, they're just a civil society group collecting data about religious persecution in Nigeria. Well, the devil is in the details. I think yesterday, the point was raised about not blaming the journalists, and I said, no, I didn't want to go after New York Times so that, you know, it doesn't look like dog is trying to eat dog. But I made a point that I hope that this is not another Janet Cook story. In 1981, Janet Cook, a journalist, BA journalism, reporting for the Washington Post, wrote a story about an 8-year-old Jimmy said to be heroin addict. Now that story was submitted for the Pulitzer Prize for feature writing. And Janet Cook went on to win the prize. But it was then discovered that that story was fabricated. And then, of course, that prize had to be taken from her. Now, journalists are not in the business of fabrication. They are not screwdriver traders, tying things up, screwing things down and up. No, they are in the business of reporting factual information, accuracy, balance, fairness, ethical reporting. So journalistic ethics will seem to be at issue here. And it's not enough for the inter-society members, about 3 of them signed their rebuttal. They should go ahead and protest officially to the New York Times and to say that your Ruth McLean was writing, combining fiction with facts. And from the point of view of journalistic ethics, the onus is on the New York Times to take up the matter and probably to also offer, you know, an explanation or an apology if, you know, an ethical case, you know, is established. So we now have two sides of the story, from the inter-society leaders and also the report, you know, evidential report from New York Times. I think as the public, we need to know what exactly the truth is. And this does not negate my submission yesterday that the Nigerian government should also investigate this matter, because journalists of all sorts, whether they are parachute or resident journalists, cannot just come to Nigeria and fabricate stories. The gray aspect of it, however, is the allegation by the speakers from Inter-Society that perhaps this has something to do with the $4.5 million lobbying contract that Nigeria are engaging in. And now that story was being used to you know, cook up stories for the Nigerian government. That in itself is a strong indictment, you know, of New York Times. And New York Times has an obligation to defend its own integrity.
Absolutely.
Okay. No, the pronunciation is not correct. What is it again? Integrity.
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 The kind of things we see on the list.
So a couple of things. When it matters like this, is back and forth. It behoves on New York Times, because I'm not sure that New York Times, with its capacity, will have done that 3-hour interview as they claim without recording it.
Yeah.
We'd like to see the recording at some point to be able to clarify the facts. But as regards also journalism and, spinning stories and all of that, the advice is always stay on the side of facts. Dr. Abati, as regards your story, let me now tell you a very funny story of Janet Cook. Isn't it shocking?
Very briefly, please.
Very briefly. Isn't it shocking that Janet Cook, that the Pulitzer Prize was withdrawn from for telling lies? The man, Gongon, that the prize was named after, Joseph Pulitzer, was known to be the father of yellow journalism.
He was not for fabricating.
No,
He was needling society.
It was needling society. He was fabricating, was telling lies. In fact, it was to clear his name, to repair his image. But I think the most important thing and a point I want to make here is trying to ascribe all that happened to this screwdriver salesman is wrong.
Yes.
And I'll give you a list quickly, Vinbai.
Very quickly.
Very
please.
quickly. You can eat out of my time in the other stories. Please.
No, we don't think time sharing. Go ahead.
I want to give you, these charities I'm going to call are charities that have been working in the northern part of Nigeria for a while. And that's why I'm happy that you read Francis Ntor's message as regards, because there's also a weakness in Yelwata. Catholic Relief Services, Global Christian Relief, Christian Mission Aid, Call of Hope, Christian Solidarity International, Faith Alive, Voice of Matter International Christian Concern, SIM USA. These are charities that are really working with churches in the northern part of Nigeria. And they jolly well do get data as regards incidents like this. So it's a concert of effort. And that's why a survivor of Yelwata does also testify to the Foreign Committee in the House in America. Frank Ontor issued that message. And also the Archbishop of Makurdi, like I said before, also issued that message. So we should declare as regards that. I think this was just a very bad one.
Yes. And I think more than anything, this is a huge call to the Nigerian government to ensure that we get more serious about data collection and that we have our own, sovereign set of data.
But we have the MBS. The last time the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics released a data on kidnapping numbers in this country, you know how the security forces stepped in and they said that data was phony.
Which is why I say we have to be serious about verifiable and factual data. Well, let's move to another issue that went viral yesterday as a diesel tanker toppled over on the Tin Can Liverpool Bridge in Apapa, Lagos, triggering a rush by residents and passers-by to collect the highly combustible fuel spilling from the vehicle. Now, witnesses said the tanker capsized during Monday's early morning rush hour, with traffic management officials absent from the scene when the incident was first reported. Videos show people converging on the site with jerrycans and containers of various shapes and sizes to collect the spilled product. The Lagos State Traffic Management Authority announced on X that emergency responders had contained the situation and reopened the affected route. They said the road on Liverpool Bridge inward Apapa that was cordoned off has been reopened after the contents have been neutralized by men of Lagos State Fire Service. LASMA officials are also doing the needful, and traffic is expected to move better while we await the arrival of a tow truck that was yesterday. Now, of course, the bridge was also cordoned off, and the counterflow traffic was controlled. Vehicular movement remained slow. That's what the agency had to say. But this incident mirrors previous fuel scooping episodes across Nigeria that have resulted in deadly explosions. It's not the first time we're seeing these type of scenes. If you remember, in October 2024, there were more than 100 people that perished after a petrol tanker burst into flames along the Kano-Hadejia Expressway in Jigawa State. But let's take a look at some tweets. This tweet from Ogochukwu. This particular tweet from Ugochukwu says, this video of people scooping fuel from an overturned tanker was taken this morning at Tin Can Liverpool Bridge at Apapa, Lagos. Frankly, it is difficult to understand how people still rush to scoop fuel each time a tanker falls, despite the many lives that have been lost in similar incidents. For me, this is not bravery or smartness. It is a deadly risk. No amount of fuel is worth a human life. One spark is enough to turn that place into a mass grave. Our people need to value their lives more than momentary gain. Fuel can be replaced. Human life cannot. From the side of the government, too, we need stronger public education, quicker emergency response, and better systems for conveying inflammables. Now, still on the aftermath of this story, traffic safety concerns have resurfaced at the Liverpool Bridge in Apapa, Lagos, following an incident involving a fully loaded 40-foot diesel tanker that skidded off part of the bridge. According to the organizing secretary of the Association of Truck Owners Kirikiri Development Initiative, DK Kene Collins, overspeeding was the primary cause of the accident. And he noted that accidents involving these loaded trucks are frequent on the Liverpool Bridge and expressed concern over the delays in implementing safety measures announced by Lagos State government, which of course includes several things, amongst them compressed natural gas trucks and improved driver safety programs. And of course, strengthening driver training. But Rufai, these images are images we see time and time again. Let's hear what they have to say.
We urge the government, the state government, the federal government, whoever that is responsible, that there is an urgent need to come and look at the structure of this place. And in the interim, there's supposed to be speed breakers on top of this bridge, and there are no signs. This is something that has been reoccurring. It's a persistent reoccurrence on this particular spot that we're talking about. Sometime last year, it killed people here. We have videos to back up that fact. This particular place, this particular curve. So we urge the state government, continuous training and retraining of drivers, the eyesight. There are so many policies that we've had from the Lagos state government. We expect them to urgently kick into starts the programs they have for drivers with training, even the safety awareness, whatever they have, both the eyesight training and all have you, so that this kind of things can be nipped in the bud. Because thank God that no life was lost here, but look at the value of the property being lost. We urge the government to facilitate and fast track whatever program they have.
The emergency response was not very swift due to equipment. The deployment of equipment did not come on time as expected, because it's expected that at a situation like this, all the emergency equipment would have been deployed to site in the next 1 hour. But look at time, this is about 12:30, since maybe 7 o'clock in the morning. It does not really speak well of our emergency response plan. The motor boy sustained a minor injury. The driver sustained a minor injury.
All right.
Okay. So see,
yeah.
When we say Nigeria happened, it means culture will eat strategy for breakfast. If you talk about analysis of that issue, there are many things. Number one, what's the state of the driver? Is there a forum at which you even get a breathalyzer test for a driver before he goes out? Secondly, the state of the roads. Have we been able to factor in the state of the road? Somebody was talking about no speed breaker and all of that. What's even the integrity of the bridge? What's the state of the car? The truck itself. What was the brake level like? You get? Who assesses all of these things? Who gives an all clear of all of this? Then the last point is the state of the people. So when an incident happened, you heard him say the emergency didn't come on time. Could they have cordoned that place off quickly so that people, even downstairs, will not be able to go there and go and scoop fuel? Because we've seen it happen. One that can never leave my mind, I keep saying it by, is the one in JC. I think that's one of the biggest tanker disaster ever in this country because of the magnitude of the deaths that happened in JC. So when you have all of this problem, then how do we mitigate? Number one, some people say, oh, maybe CNG trucks. I mean, any truck can carry. But the state of the truck in the first place, have we even investigated that? We'll never get to investigate that. How does accidents like this go through a postmortem, where people evaluate what truly happened? Is there an inquest, there's an inquiry? It never happens in Nigeria. The guy will probably just go to church and say, we thank God for what has happened. At least once I'm alive, there is hope.
Yeah.
Then second, the sensitization. See, no matter the sensitization, people will still go out there to scoop first. So what you have to do is to prevent it from happening. Okay. So take, for instance, if you deploy security officials on ground, cordon the place off properly, yeah, they're going to have a surgery, but they will have to go back one way or the other. So did we manage it effectively? We are lucky, and we thank God that it didn't degenerate, because people still scoop fuel. But the next time we might not be this lucky.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, did you say that he referred to was on October 17, 1998, when Nigerians witnessed the spectacle of people going to scoop fuel. Somebody made the mistake of maybe lighting a cigarette or something, and, scores of persons were incinerated. Since then, we have had similar issues, whether it's in Niger State, or it is in the same Delta State, or here in Ijegun in the same Lagos State, or in other parts of Nigeria, including Jigawa. So you ask the question, why are people doing this? It looks like there's a suicidal instinct among Nigerians. There's a problem of poverty. There's also the problem of desperation. Many of those people there on the screen, they don't own any vehicle, but they will take the petrol, they will probably go and sell it. Now, what of the response mechanism by the state? Where are the first responders? This incident will have gone on for hours, but there was no fire safety response. There was nobody in terms of security to disperse the people and remind them of the kind of danger they were exposing themselves to. And you ask the question, is it that poverty affects people's brains? Because it doesn't take much intelligence to know that if you go near inflammable material, anything could happen. All of these people scooping fuel from the bleeding tanker, they are potential corpses. Oh, that's the problem. And I made a point about the responders because as we speak now, I understand that there is fire incident in Lagos here at the popular computer village in Ikeja, close to the bridge. And what you have in some of the images coming out is like an inferno. Why is it that nobody has gone there to assist the people and to put out the fire? Tomorrow morning, we will now hear from emergency service in Lagos. Oh, we got there 20 minutes after. Oh, our vehicle broke down along the way. Oh, we thank God no lives were lost. We shouldn't be in that kind of a situation. And that's why we have emergency response systems in the country. Those systems, those agencies, those mechanisms should function.
Absolutely. And I wonder how we'll get people to stop thinking that when this happens, it's a manna from heaven that has blessed them. It is not. So we thank God anyway in that incident. No lives were lost. Now, here's a turn of fortune from the revered office of the Attorney General of the Federation to Kuje prison, and now to DSS custody. This is the story of Abubakar Malami, who has surrendered himself to the Department of State Services following days of tension surrounding his stalled bail and heavy security presence at the Kuje Correctional Center in Abuja. The former Attorney General of the Federation decision comes after his continued detention, despite meeting bail conditions, triggered widespread attention and concern. Of course, his confinement had turned into a major security issue, with movements around the correctional facility tightly controlled for several days. Now, let's take a look at some responses from Twitter, reactions. Dapsy tweeted and said, "Where are the others before Malami? They were dragged, and we have now moved on from all the court drama. They are now forgotten and left to enjoy the huge percentage left of their loot. They drag these people for a show, and the whole process gathers dust in an obscure court. The strategy is to loot massively, get a slap on the wrist, and 20% back to the government in forfeitures. In a few months, the noise dies down. They reinvent themselves as godfathers, sponsor candidates or their children into juicy offices. We keep on going round in circles." Well, David Osadolo had a different view. He said, "This is so wrong. The fact that Malami did it when he was in power doesn't mean this government must repeat this terrible behavior." But Dr. Abati, as you said earlier, he's innocent until proven guilty. However, the grace extended to public figures in Nigeria and just around the world around issues surrounding corruption specifically has started to wane, as people see sort of what they feel are the excesses of public office. And so when these court cases come around, most people, especially public opinion, does rush to do its own, public trial. Your thoughts on the movements around?
Look, there is what is called a global integrity framework, which deals with all forms of corruption, whether it's high corruption, it's called grand corruption, or, the lower level corruption. But corruption is corruption. But the experience in Africa is that, senior officials of state, big men, big women tend to get away with it. But you are right. There is a trend in, enforcing integrity frameworks. That's why you have bodies like Transparency International. And in all these jurisdictions, the principle is that nobody is above the law. whether you were king yesterday or you were prime minister the other day, that integrity framework holds you accountable. So the key words are transparency and accountability. Even for persons who enjoy immunity while in office, they can still be questioned when that immunity has faded. The second point is about the fact that nobody is above the rule of law. Wherever you are, everyone is under the umbrella of law. And the law, stipulates certain duties, certain obligations, certain expectations, so that society is not a chaotic place where people just do as they like. The third point is that no condition is permanent. You can be the big cock today, tomorrow you can just be a small fly, by the wall. And that is what we see in many of these, big cases that we have had in Nigeria. Here is Mr. Malami SAN. He was Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, the Chief Law Officer of the Federation, one of the only ministerial position that is recognized in the Constitution. Bodies like EFCC, DSS, ICPC, they were at a time under his portfolio, and now it's those same agencies going after him. However, I conclude by saying that whoever it is that finds itself within the crosshairs of the law enforcement process in Nigeria, such a person is innocent until proven guilty. Such a person is entitled to fair hearing. Such a person is entitled to have his day in court and to have counsel, legal counsel of his own choice, who can defend him. And the government of the day and the various agencies must refrain from victimization, persecution, or media trial. And the media has a role in this regard also, not to use their platforms to promote media trial and conviction before due process, an authorization of a court of competent jurisdiction.
Yes, those are the points. But, I know some people on social media were saying there was an Uber DSS, a DSS Uber waiting for him outside Kuje Correctional Facility to whisk him away to his next destination. Anyway, let's look at some issues in Bayelsa State. As the Commissioner of Iyama, Daniel Edobo, has condemned the assault on a tricycle rider, popularly known as Keke, and has ordered the arrest of the officers involved. This was contained in a press statement signed by the command's police public relations officers, DSP Musa Mohammed. The statement in parts reads, and I quote, "The attention of the Bayelsa State Police Command has been drawn to a viral video making the rounds on social media platforms, allegedly showing police officers assaulting a Keke driver. The Commissioner of Police, Bayelsa State Command, CP Iyama Daniel Edebo, has condemned the act in strong terms, describing it as unacceptable and contrary to professional policing standards. He reiterates that the command does not tolerate any form of human rights violation, unprofessional conduct, or brutality." Let's take a look at the video. All right, well, you saw the video. The officers involved have been arrested and disciplinary proceedings have been instituted. They've commenced in accordance with provisions of the Police Act. But we see this recurring incidents over and over again.
Vimbai, I'll send you a video of a child. The girl is probably less than 5 or 10, that was doing a video and says, "When I grow up, I want to be a police officer, because they used to beat Keke and collect money." I know they are good police officers, and I make a case for the good ones any day, anytime. But this is the bad example of the Nigerian police. And it ties all of them with a brush. If we investigate it, maybe it can't be more than money. It can't be more. You see what money will cost in this Nigerian poverty? It can't be more than money. People have gotten killed because police want to collect money from you. It can't be more than money. So we want the security forces to be able to investigate. As regards the Malami case, Dr. Abati said they shouldn't do media trial. How will the media people show up if they don't do media trial? The essence of bringing the case in public glare is not to fight corruption. See, Vimba, I don't know if you understand how Nigeria works. Let me explain it to you.
You say, how will the media in Nigeria chop?
If there's no media trial, if there's no stories. So it is big man's story that they caught for corruption that is in Kuje that sells. So let me tell you how it's done. A big man caught in corruption.
A new government indicts him. They use him to catch trips for anti-corruption, like they are fighting corruption. But in the end, they know that they're not going to indict him because he will still go through the law process one way or the other. The law will still let him go. So when that happens, they say they are fighting corruption. Can you show me in this country how many very big men conviction? There are not many, except they have a proper vendetta against you. And so Nigeria, they now do this because they know that Nigeria lacks institutional memory. Before you know it, after some point, they'll let you go. Didn't him, Malami himself, was the one that declared a nollie prosecute on a particular politician that was a corruption case on because that one was running for Senate. When that one wanted to run for Senate president, when that one needed to do a deal with them, he did a deal with them. Yes. He stepped down and he moved for. Vimbai, let me please, producer, I just got beg. Let me just make this point. It's a very important point. So they will now wait after a period of time. They will see honor. Is it not in this country that those that return Abacha loots are given very high honors in this country today? So it's not the intention. It's just they will do media trial, cast trips, and at the point they will leave you.
All right.
And lawyers will eat.
Well, I like to say I'm not part of the media that's chopping in your
I'm not
analogy.
Saying they are chopping. They sell the stories.
They sell the stories.
That's what I'm telling you.
Okay, if you put it that way. Well, let's see. EFCC and DSS. Let's see how both of those cases do pan out. Now, very quickly to another story where comedian Bovi took to his social media to post a video recounting the events that transpired 60 years ago during Nigeria's first military coup, as taken from the book Oil, Politics and Violence by Maxillian. However, this has sparked polarized debate as some feel that the account he shared was inaccurate.
The major casualties of this coup were from another part of the country. The major survivor of this coup was from the parts of the country where these coup plotters come from. That is Agoyi Ronsi, and he became president. On that day, something bad was born because the major leaders of the senior men in the army and the government politics, right, were from a part. So the young soldiers that were from one part of the country were like, wait, why we say our leaders die? Fine, there were other people who died in the coup, but why did our leaders die? And the only survivor amongst the leaders in the army, the only survival is from the same place as those who planned the coup. So like I said, something bad was born.
Right. Well, in a swift reaction to this, Reno Omokri penned a piece titled "What Bovi Got Wrong About the January 15, 1966 Coup." And this is what he wrote. He said, "Yesterday I watched a video by the comedian Chris Asimoye Uboma, aka Bovi, detailing the events of January 15, 1966. I commend him for his narrative. However, there was one detail which he inadvertently misstated and which ought to be corrected, lest it pass into history, as some Nigerians have a propensity to substitute myth for fact. Contrary to popular wisdom, Major Chukwuma Nzeogu was not the mastermind of the coup, which today bears his name. In reality, the so-called Nzeogu coup was masterminded by Major Emmanuel Ifeajuna. Many Nigerians do not know that Nzeogu wrote letters, which may be termed as an uncompleted manuscript while in detention at Aba prison, detailing some of the events of that infamous day. The letters were mostly to his best friend, who would later become a Nigerian military head of state. Out of respect for him, I shall not mention his name." Well, several issues coming out of this. Where do I begin? Let me begin with you, Rufai.
So,
yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank God at the start of that video, what did Bovi say? He said he was quoting from Marx Solon. Yes. That's a version of history. If you read Ademoyega, that's another version of history. Ifejuna was part of it. Yes, the role, played in it, Cardinal Nzegu, was also big. Because you cannot forget that it was Ferdinand Nzegu that led the troop in the north to go attack the Southerners. That role is also there. If you also read John St. Jore's accounts, which I say is one of the most balanced. Jore's accounts, which I think one of the most balanced accounts. What he also said is also a different account. If you read Philip Effiong's account, It's also different. I think Bile even wrote a book before he passed. It's another account. So there are different accounts. There's no one size fits all to this account, you know. But what we should also now talk when we are talking history and we're having these debates is also the role and the sensationalism media played in all of this breakdown. Most notably, Drum magazine. I'm not sure they still do Drum again. Drum magazine.
Who was the editor then? Nelson Ota. Nelson Ota.
The sensationalism. And that's why when we look at conversations about race relations and all of that, we should be very careful because things can easily snowball. So you can't say there's one account that fits all of the narrative. There are different accounts. If you ask 5 people about the story, they'll tell you 5 different accounts.
And before we go to Milestone, sorry, Dr. Abati, I also just want you to add how do we get to the truth? If there are so many accounts, and who will accept the truth?
Okay, the literature is out there on the Nigerian Civil War, one of the most transformative experiences that Nigeria has had, both fictional and factual, and accounts by the persons who were direct architects of the issue. But I think where the problem lies is the attempt to give an ethnic coloration to that, either the Civil War or the January 15, 1966 coup. And that is where the problem lies. Now, some people say it's in Zogu school. Some people say it is Ifeajuna school. The controversy is neither here nor there. All the persons that have been mentioned, whether it is Madiebo or Nsogu or Anoforo or Ifeajuna, these were a team of young men, average age 30, 31 at the time. What they were attacking were failed systems in Nigeria, corruption in Nigeria, and they wanted a better country. It was not as if there was an ethnic plebiscite.
It was not an Igbo coup.
It was not as if it wasn't as if there was an ethnic plebiscite to organize that coup. In fact, Kaduna Izaogu, in particular, was Igbo, yes, but he was born and raised in Kaduna. He was more Hausa Fulani than others, and he thought what was happening in the country was not good enough. That's the first point. The second point, of course, is that if you read General Babangida's book, My Journey in Service, he devoted attention to this same issue about ethnic correlation, that the ethnic correlation is exaggerated, that this was not about ethnicity. This was a far more complex process by young men who wanted to change Nigeria. And I think that's the line, the trope that we should push 60 years after the fact. Instead of, all this Ifeajuna coup, in Zogu school, it's a level of emotional simplicity that shows ignorance and illiteracy, if I may add that.
Very beautifully said, and I hope we can continue to educate ourselves and the nation about history and the correct factual accounts. Now to milestones. We celebrate Chief Emeka Anyaoku, a Nigerian diplomat and elder statesman who turned 93 years old on Sunday. Born 18 January 1933 in Obosi, Anambra State, he was the third Commonwealth Secretary General. Anyaoku was educated at Merchants of Light School, Oba, and attended the University College, Ibadan, then a college of the University of London, from which he obtained an honours degree in classics as a college scholar. At 93, Chief Anyaoku stands as one of Nigeria's finest gifts to the world, a diplomat whose life has been one of service, principle, and the power of dialogue over discord. Anyaoku belongs to that rare generation of Nigerians who carry the country's moral weight into the councils of the world and did not drop it. We wish him a very happy birthday from here at Arise, and we wish him many, many more in good health. Now, also on milestones today, we celebrate the life of Italian fashion icon Valentino Garavani, who died yesterday at the age of 93. Born Born Valentino Clemente Ludovico Garavani in May 11, 1932 in Voghera, Lombardy, he developed an interest in fashion while still in primary school. Valentino Garavani, the Italian fashion designer, became synonymous with mastery of color, elegance, and haute couture. Known simply as Valentino, the deceased was more than a designer and was a cultural force who shaped how elegance looked, felt, and moved for more than half a century. From the glamour of post-war Rome to the grand salons of Paris, Valentino built a fashion empire rooted in craftsmanship, color, and an unwavering devotion to beauty. His international breakthrough came in the mid-1960s, and by the 1970s and 1980s, the Valentino name had become firmly established at the summit of high fashion. Today, we celebrate a life well lived, one that has made a huge impact globally. May he rest in peace, Valentino Garavani. And that's all we have for milestones and on what's trending today.
Thank you very much, Vimbai. We look forward to seeing you again. And it's a wrap on today's edition of The Morning Show. Rotu Sodiri is up next with Global Business Report, and he'll be speaking to Mark Ursner, head of the Global Risks Initiative, and Sanyade Okole, Special Advisor to the Nigerian President on Finance and Economy. Stay with us. This is still the Arise News Channel, your global standout news channel.
Hello, everyone. I'm here with the woman that makes all the things happen in Fidelity Bank, the MD of Fidelity Bank.
FNITCC was conceptualized in 2022, and the whole idea was to create a platform where our exporters lead with the global community are able to showcase their products. What we do in the banking industry is to always try to meet the needs of our customers, and we could see that the exporters were struggling with, they didn't have a global stage on which to showcase their goods. We did so much initially in terms of capacity building. After that, the products were made, were put in proper quality, packaging and all of that. So the next step naturally is to take it to the global stage, especially if you focus on making world-class products.
Like they say, build it and they will come.
Yes, they will, don't worry about it. Build it and they will come.
All right, ma'am.
We are Fidelity. We keep our word.
Hi, baby girl. Hello. I know. I've missed you.
Why text when you can talk? With Glow Talk Master 6 for 6. You get all the time you need to catch up with friends and loved ones. Free with Glow Talk Master. Talk for 6 minutes and get 6 minutes free. Plus 50 MB data. Simply dial *606#. New Glow subscribers also enjoy an extra 2,000 Naira data and airtime welcome bonus. That's right. Every time you make up to 6 minutes of calls in a day, you get 6 free minutes plus 50 MB data. Simply dial *606# now to enjoy Glow Talk Master. That's right, 50 MB free data to connect and share as you please.
Thinking of banking in Africa? Think Zenith. In today's fast-moving, fast-changing world, you need a financial partner that understands your unique expectations. A bank digitally connected across Africa and global financial centers with the enabling platform to facilitate seamlessly whenever, wherever, however. A bank with smart financial solutions from a systemized blend of technology and human touch. For easy, fast, and secure banking that creates real value. Turning dreams into reality is now in your hands. People, technology, service, Zenith Bank, in your best interest.
Every winter, the world's most influential people come to Davos to negotiate the future face to face. Money,
energy, war, AI, trade, innovation, and all else. Africa will be there as well as Nigeria. The decisions made here will shape what happens to everyone else. As always, Arise has a front row seat, not to admire power, but to interrogate and shape the future. Join me, Rhoda Sodiri, Rolake Akinkube Filani, and Anizio Sakwe. Trust us to be your guide to the 2026 World Economic Forum. Watching closer, listening harder, and translating the moment into what it means for your life. Because the decisions made here don't stay here. They travel into markets, into borders, into prices, into policies. Stay with Arise News in Davos 2026. We're live, relentless, uncompromising. If it shifts the world, you'll see it first on the world's standout global news channel, Arise News.
Coming soon to over 500 million smartphone users and 1.5 billion voices. Leke, the social platform for the world, out of Africa. By the founders of Arise and This Day Media Group, we're going to be launching with a big bang. A new homegrown social platform born in Africa and built for the world, blending community, culture, and cutting-edge AI. It's fast, culturally rooted, data-friendly, and designed to scale globally. A digital platform for youth, creators, and business. A one-stop shop to connect, share, create, and earn. It's time to end social media imperialism. This is Leke, a voice for all.
You're watching Arise, the world's standout news channel. Arise News, awards, and beyond.
Hello, welcome to Arise News. You are watching the Global Business Report. Rhoda Sodiri, we are live in Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum. My colleague, Abi Owolawi, is with me, of course, in the Lagos studio. And let's take a look at our headlines. Day 2. For 200% tariffs, U.S. President Trump is threatening that amount of tariffs on France. So explain what's going on there. Speaking of President Trump, Arise News moderated a panel session here in Davos, and one of the panelists from Amnesty International says U.S. President Trump is an authoritarian. Also, the World Economic Forum, its latest global risks listing geopolitical tensions as the #1 threat to the globe in 2026. And also, the special advisor to President Tinubu on finance and the economy says Nigeria is in Davos for reform credibility. It's the Global Business Report. Do stay tuned. We're going to go back to Lagos right now.
Of our Global Business Report here on Arise News. Many thanks for joining us this morning. The 56th annual meeting of the World Economic Forum convenes the foremost leaders from government, business and civil society from the 19th to the 23rd of January 2026. Now, under the theme, A Spirit of Dialogue, Davos 2026 provides an impartial platform to connect leaders to confront shared challenges and drive innovations defining the future. Here is a roundup report from yesterday's coverage at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Let's have a look.
A musical opening for the biggest World Economic Forum ever. Business leaders, heads of state, startup founders, and policymakers descended on the Swiss mountain town of Davos amid tight security, heavy traffic, and a handful of anti-capitalist protesters. The theme this year is A Spirit of Dialogue. At a time of global division and increased nationalism, Davos is where decision makers will get some face time and set the agenda for the coming year. And this year, Nigeria is making its presence felt. Vice President Kashim Shettima cut the ribbon on Nigeria House, a glitzy venue on the Davos promenade.
There is never a better time to be a Nigerian and to be an investor in Nigeria better than now. We have created the enabling environment for businesses to prosper. From day one, as I said earlier, the president took the bullet by withdrawing the subsidy on petroleum.
Nigeria House has a packed schedule of talks, panels, and receptions planned. The message to the world that the government's economic reforms are working and the time is right to invest in Nigeria. The Nigerian delegation will be joined by 850 business leaders and 65 heads of state, including U.S. President Donald Trump and his entourage, who arrive on Wednesday. Meanwhile, the rest of the world will be watching closely to see if all this talk will be turned into action. Rhoda Sadiri, Arise News.
Now, U.S. President Donald Trump is threatening to impose 200% tariffs on French wines and champagne after French President Emmanuel Macron was reported to unwilling to join his board of peace in Gaza. Now, when asked for a response about Macron's stance, Trump dismissed the French leader's influence and said he would rather use trade penalties as leverage. Arise business correspondent Rhoda Zaduri hosted a panel session at the World Economic Forum with the theme, Which 2050 Do We Want? Now, one of the panelists, Agnes Calamard, Secretary General of Amnesty International UK, said the first 12 months of Donald Trump's second term in office is a perfect example of authoritarianism. Let's have a look.
Spoken about your worries over the spread of authoritarianism across the world, and Zainab was just talking about protests, and we've seen a number of protests flare up in different regions. As we march towards 2050, the protests seem to be matching. Well, I'm going to put that to you. Do you think the protests are matching the spread of authoritarianism, and is authoritarianism essentially, is there a check on it in your view?
Well, authoritarianism is galloping, it's increasing. It's not just an Amnesty International finding, it's a finding of everyone who research human rights, democracy, and so on. Some of the most long-term studies have concluded that right now we're back to 1985 level in terms of how many people in the world live in so-called democracies. So we have lost some count since 1985, since the fall of the Berlin Wall, all the progress, we've seen a U-turn for people around the world. Authoritarianism is quick. Democracy takes a very long time to be established. Look at the United States, 12 months of Donald Trump in the White House, and it is a playbook of how authoritarian practices get embedded into every institutions, from attacks on freedom of expression, freedom of the media, academic freedom, freedom of association, attacks on dissent, creation of new militarized security forces that are unbounded, the attacks on migrants, on refugees, on trans, on women, all of those things have taken place in 12 months.
A highly insightful panel discussion from the ongoing World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. And Arise business correspondent Reuben Abati joins us live from Davos now to discuss this further. Good morning, Reuben. Riveting panel there, I believe. Of course, we've only seen a compressed version so far. Let's get some more details from you now. Having anchored this discussion, what would you say were some of the most important insights to emerge from this panel?
Good morning, Abby, and good morning to all our viewers around the world. Yeah, so it was a really engaging panel. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. There was a lot of passion, particularly around the topic of authoritarianism and geopolitical headwinds. Even, later on we have a guest from that heads the Global Risks Initiative here at the World Economic Forum, Mark Lisner, and he's going to be talking to us about that. So insight number one is that authoritarianism is on the rise. We had a professor from Columbia University, head of the European Insights, Adam Toones, and he followed our panelist from Amnesty International with an even more passionate response about how authoritarianism is shutting down democracy around the world. And Donald Trump was the main example they kept coming back to over and over. Insight number two was about accountability, Abby, because we talked about misinformation online. We had a tech representative, head of an AI company on that panel, and he got a lot of questions from the audience and from myself and panelists about AI's role in misinformation. And I said, look, this thing is about systems and this thing is about taking accountability. And then another panelist that talked about how, when it comes to fake news, what is it within us, within an individual, outside of their education and their background, that makes them susceptible to imbibing fake news and believing stuff that goes counter to what are facts. So that was also an invigorating discussion there. And then, we also talked about, I guess, the main theme being, what is the 2050 we want to see? Pretty much everyone there said that. So that's insight number three now. So authoritarianism, accountability, and three, efforts. If you want the 2050 that you want to see, whether you want to see a 2050 where you have only female presidents, or you want a 2050 where everyone has an electric car, or you want a 2050 where there's no more cash and everything is digital, it's all about efforts. And policy was also a major talking point there. So I think I'll make policy number four.
All right, quite a myriad there. And I must say the panel title itself is quite a telling one in terms of the conversations that this must have generated as you went. Now, Agnes Callamard argued, from what we know about this panel, that leaders like Donald Trump show how authoritarian tendencies can take hold, even in mature democracies. Now, in the context of day one at the World Economic Forum 2026, how should analysts read Trump's posture amid calls for a renewed spirit of dialogue?
Trump's posture is unfortunately one of economic weaponization, and we're going to get to France in a moment. I heard, that's part of the headlines. That's just what, barely how many hours ago. Prior to that, there were more tariffs that were levied. Well, at least he's threatening them on Denmark, the UK, and others as a result of Greenland. So whenever President Trump doesn't get what he wants, you get the threat of a tariff. So the way analysts are going to be looking at this, to answer your question, is through a lens of economic coercion, or if you want to use stronger language, economic arm twisting from the president, because the United States is the biggest economy in the world. It has the largest capital market. What are you going to do? You need that market. And so he's using these economic weaponization to coerce them. And in terms of the theme here in Davos, that's the reason why there's been a bit of cynicism, because dialogue doesn't seem to be working. But what can you do? You have to keep pushing. You have to keep the effort up. But analysts are going to frame this within the lens of economic arm twisting.
Right, certainly, Rotis. And of course, this is, a really good way to segue into trade and talking about France. Of course, we saw Trump, as I mentioned earlier in my read, that Trump has threatened a 200% tariff on French wines and champagnes to pressure Emmanuel Macron into backing his proposed board of peace. Now, would you say that this trade coercion is a sign of an authoritarian-style strategy or simply hard-nosed geopolitics? What's the feel on ground over there?
Well, so he's here tomorrow, and my goodness, Arise News is we're going to try to get in that room, and we're going to try to get a word from the president if we can, because we want to ask him, of course, about Nigeria, whether or not he's still speaking with the Nigerian government about trying to eradicate terrorism in the the northern parts of Nigeria if more strikes are happening. So we're trying to get a word with President Trump if possible. So yes. With respect to the answer to your question, it could be both. It could be, hard-nosed geopolitics and, of course, authoritarianism in terms of it's the B word, bully. He's essentially trying to bully these nations to another B word, bend to his will. So that's the frame to look at it. I should point out for our viewers, just a reminder, with all this talk of tariffs left and right, the Supreme Court of the United States, they've been teasing us since last week. We thought we were going to, or 2 weeks ago, we thought we were going to get a decision on those tariffs, whether they're legal or not. They didn't give it to us 2 weeks ago on Friday. We thought we'd get it the following Wednesday. Now we're hearing the opinion to come next week. There is a possibility, at least the last time I checked Poly Markets, which is a betting site, there was a 1 in 4 chance, so 25% chance that the Supreme Court sides with President Trump. So it's possible that all these tariff threats could be mute. He's going to use them to his advantage as much as possible now, but everyone should keep in mind that there's going to be breaking news one way or the other, whether they favor him or don't, from the U.S. Supreme Court on these tariffs that he's using to bludgeon countries that are supposed to be his allies, including here in Switzerland. Don't forget, Switzerland, there was a delegation that had to come from Switzerland here and go to the White House to talk to President Trump to try to reduce tariffs. So yeah, we'll see how that goes when that Supreme Court decision is delivered, whenever that is. We'll keep our ears and noses to the ground.
Right, it's certainly quite a tug of war there, for lack of better words. But I've got to tell you, Rotis, we certainly will be keeping our eyes peeled and hoping to get that conversation with Trump tomorrow. So lots to look forward to. Many thanks, Rotis, for keeping boots on the ground as always, and I will catch up with you again later on the show. You're watching the Global Business Report here on Arise News. We have a lot more with Rotis live from Davos at the World Economic Forum 2026, so stay tuned.
Buying your Airpeace ticket just got easier with Fidelity Bank. When you book on flyairpeace.com, choose Fidelity payment options and complete your payment effortlessly. With Fidelity Bank, you can pay with transfer, fast, secure, and powered by Fidelity. Buy now, pay later, enjoy flexible payments, and travel stress-free. Book on hold. Lock in your travel plans and pay when you're ready. Whichever you choose, every transaction is quick, seamless, and protected. No stress, no hassle. Just smooth payments every time. Because with Fidelity Bank, flying Airpeace isn't just about getting there, it's about getting there with ease. Fly Airpeace. Pay the Fidelity way. Simple, safe, convenient. Visit flyairpeace.com to get started.
We are Fidelity.
Fidelity. We keep our word.
Every winter, the world's most influential people come to Davos to negotiate the future face to face. Money, energy, war, AI, trade, innovation, and all else. Africa will be there as well as Nigeria. The decisions made here will shape what happens to everyone else. As always, Arise has a front row seat, not to admire power, but to interrogate and shape the future. Join me, Rhodas Odiri, Rolake Akinkube Filani, and Anizio Sakwe. Trust us to be your guide to the 2026 World Economic Forum. Watching closer, listening harder, and translating the moment into what it means for your life. Because the decisions made here don't stay here. They travel into markets, into borders, into prices, into policies. Stay with Arise News in Davos 2026. We're live, relentless, on